Kind of a funny rule, but it's a rule.
Well, back on top.
You're good to go.
Good job. Blue Lake City Council meeting today is November 25th. Please go ahead and stand for the license.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2. And Becky, can you go ahead and start?
Call to order, sure.
Great.
Councilmember Napier. Here. This is Lewis. I am so sorry.
Present.
Yeah, okay. Mayor Swansky.
Here.
Councilmember Scafani.
Here.
And Councilmember Bay. Here.
Right.
All present and accounted for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, item number 3, approval of the agenda.
The only thing I see is the date.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The date on mine was the 23rd. That was the 23rd.
Thank you. It was flagged, and so we did circulate an amended date, and we posted it amended for the 25th.
I printed this.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
All right, move to approve.
Motion made by Susan,
Second.
seconded by Scafani. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none. It passes. Public comment on non-agendized items. The public is invited to present petitions, make announcements, or provide other information to the city council that is relevant to the scope of authority of the city of Blue Lake that is not on the agenda. The council may provide up to 15 minutes for this public input session to ensure each individual presentation is heard. The council may uniformly impose time limitations of 3 minutes to each individual presentation. The public will be given the opportunity to address items that are on the agenda at the time when the council takes up each specific agenda item. Would anybody like to speak? Ms. Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me speak. I wanted to speak before Adeline because I didn't think I could tolerate listening to her talk about how great our ex-city manager was again. So I don't even know what I have to say today, but I figured I should be here. So I'll start with this. Today at 2:48 p.m., after writing numerous posts on social media, which I know you all saw about how frustrated I am that the city has not paid me yet after 16 years for the lease on the water tank plant. So 2:48 p.m. This is a text message, so professional, from your city attorney. Aaron, I have a letter for you. There's a hard copy for you to pick up at City Hall. If you'd like me to send it another way, let me know. Please pick it up. So I was just handed that letter by your city manager. I did not pick it up on purpose because I am under the understanding that it's a threatening letter. It doesn't matter what that letter says. I still have all the things to say that I'm going to say today. First of all, I'm tired of not being paid for the lease. As long as you guys do not pay me for that lease and I continue to try to negotiate a deal, I've spent probably $100 grand on that. That is ridiculous. I want the tank turned off. I want the inlet valve. I've called everyone I could think of today, and I want that inlet valve on that tank turned off. I have numerous videos of that tank today. Water is pouring out of that tank on both sides. I know John was up there. I know Kat was up there. We were up there, I don't know, how, 6 months ago? I don't know. But since you've seen it, Kat, it's probably 4 times worse. It's pouring out into a fish bearing stream. So I think Fish and Game is going to be interested in that. I asked Jill if she'd like to see the tank. She seemed to have no interest in it. So it's a super important thing. I know you guys were super concerned about the bike park. I feel like the water is more concerning. I've asked Brian Plotz numerous times that if I could sit down with several people on the city council and Ryan and my council and hammer this thing out in 2 days. I asked him that again today. No. So he'd like to meet with me again next week and talk it out. But every time I meet with Ryan, then it goes to you guys. then it comes to me, things are left out. Over and over and over again. I do not know what the game is, but I have some ideas, and so that the attorneys make money. As far as the things I write on social media, which Ryan gave me an earful about that, it's all true. Every last bit of it is true. Check it out. Every last bit of that's true. And if I do not get paid for this water tank thing, or your inlet valve is not turned off, I will be camping at City Hall. I do not know what else to do.
Thank you, Eric. Next commenter? Yes, go ahead, Alan.
Kathleen Jones. First of all, it deeply concerns me that minutes are missing from numerous city council meetings, including March 25th, April 8th and 22nd, May 3rd and 6th, June 24th and 27th, and July 3rd. These are all missing from the website. You can watch the video, and these can be transcribed from the videos, and that needs to happen as soon as possible, in my opinion. When Mandy Mager acted as our interim city clerk, our minutes were thorough and always timely. At the last city council meeting, where the council is now acting as our planning commission, an unfortunate situation, Jason and Lorraine Comfort came before the council with their project. One issue was the length of the driveway. Most of the houses on C Street have short driveways. If you go down there, you can see that. And in the over 50 years that the Comforts have lived there, they have never gotten in any accidents backing out of their driveway. The other Comfort issue was the alley, and that was settled decades ago by all parties involved. If the council had asked city planner Gary Reese about that, he would have told them exactly what had happened because he was here then. So these questions before the last meeting, the Comforts, if they had those answered, could be starting their project. Now they have to wait until the special meeting on December 2nd. Lastly, I just want to remind everyone that shopping local is important at Christmas time. This Saturday, November 29th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at our Mad River Grange, the Blue Lake Museum is hosting an arts and craft holiday fair with about 14 vendors selling anything from jewelry to stained glass. Admission is free and food will be available for purchase. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I
Sure, yes.
provide, I want to let you know that the minutes that you flagged, so Laura was the individual, so they were introduced to council. Council made some revisions, corrections, excuse me, that needed to be done. She was going to get those done along with going back to that meeting of the 22nd of April. And that was decided at the October 28th meeting. She let me know that she's not able to do any more work for the city. So we're now having to go back and re-scramble some of that stuff. So we are aware, and it's very frustrating. With respect to the May 3rd minutes, I haven't been able to find any information, about that because that was a special council meeting and we didn't have staff there at all. So I'll circle back with.
That was a workshop.
That was the workshop, so there's no minutes for a workshop.
And
That's
there
correct.
is an
Thank you.
audio recording posted to
Okay.
cities.
But yeah, you don't typically develop minutes for workshops. Thank you for that clarification. I knew there was something that was in there, but it is something that's on our radar, and so we are taking some corrective actions on that one.
No quick question on that. Can we generate minutes for anybody?
Well, because you've got the video, yeah, so it's, you'll recall that the April 8th minutes and the April 22nd minutes that were generated were one and the same. They had two different dates. So we clarified that the minutes from the 8th were there, and then we're having to go back into that video and regenerate that. Thank you.
Julie,
Oh, sorry, I'm just gonna ask quickly, we have an audio recording of that meeting on the 3rd of May.
May 3rd.
No video.
Oh, okay. So it's available if people want to listen to the
Yeah, we wanna
workshop.
listen to it.
Julie Christie, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to use, this is Julie Christie, my public comment time to throw some support out for Council Member Elise Stephani. I'm a big no on the recall. And it's unfortunate too to kind of hear some dialogue and public comment, because when Elise was the only one on the prior council, she was the only one that actually, when I was saying we were missing minutes and recordings, she was the only one that gave me a grain of salt on it. It never went anywhere. We still are missing those recordings. They weren't handed back over to our new staff. So any hoots, it's, and so thank you, Jill, for clarifying the process you guys are going through. Because that was something that we didn't even get an explanation in the past. We just weren't allowed to have them. So again, I think a lot of nitpicking here and there, but the reality check is that it's time to come together, you guys. There's a lot of stuff going on in our town that does need attention for the long term. I was on the trail meeting last week. I was on HCOG's meeting last week. And funding is a huge thing that's going to slap us in the face here shortly, and Humboldt and infrastructure. And we just need to do our best to pull together for our community. And I really do have faith in all of us to do that. My suggestion originally with the tanks, though, was to remove them off of the property. We knew that the city and everything probably wasn't going to work out well then. So maybe that's still another option that we can entertain. But for now, let's everybody just have an amazing, great, safe Thanksgiving. And thank you for all being there tonight.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Yes.
Hello, I'm Kevin Fisher, 311 2nd Avenue. And I'm here representing the Blue Lake Bicycle Coalition. First, I want to say thank you for signing the MOU with the RCMBA. And I want to let you guys know that we are serious about forming an ad hoc committee. It was brought up last week at that meeting, and got a group of people. We want to know what the next step is to move forward with this committee. Do we set up meetings? I know we set up meetings. So anyways, this is not a question time. This is my statement. I just want to let you know that we intend to keep moving forward with this. We look forward to working with the council and the Parks and Rec to keep moving forward on this bike park. And we will keep raising funds. We will work together with everyone here in town to keep the wheels turning on this. So look at my punch card. Did I miss anything? We want to do everything we can to get ready for next spring when the banjos start to spring.
Great, thank you. Angela, go ahead.
Angela Dare. Thanks again, guys, for doing such a great job. Appreciate all the hard work you're putting in. I actually have something to say publicly. I'm here to publicly ask the former mayor, Adeline Jones, to not give me dirty looks in meetings. At the last meeting I attended, I coughed and she spun her head around and gave me a dirty look. She was at the podium, everyone was laughing and I laughed and I got a dirty look. It was 4 times. I've been coming to these meetings and interacting with everyone here, and it's not always easy being the public, as it's not always easy being you guys, especially because we had the turnover in people. So I just want to ask that that you stop doing that to me. I would like to feel comfortable coming to meetings, and it's very difficult when I get dirty looks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Maria has a presentation from the Arts and Heritage Commission. We don't have an official item for it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you at all. Say that again.
there's a presentation from the Arts and Heritage meeting. Unfortunately, we didn't get it on this agenda. Is it okay if she makes a public comment now and then we can make an official?
She can make, absolutely make public comment.
Hey, Ruth.
Hi, everybody. I'm Roa Phillips. Just so thankful for the time and the energy that everyone's putting in and the public that came. I know how it's a busy time of the year and there's so much on your plate. And I feel the issues that we're talking about in the Arts and Heritage Commission are much smaller, and I hesitate to take your time. But I'm gonna just take a couple moments real quickly just to update you and let you know where we're at. I wish you well. So first of all, the Arts and Heritage is looking for ways to encourage more commissioners. We need more help. We need more people from the public to come on to that. And we've talked to tons of people in the Blue Lake community, and we're still looking for more. A lot of people just are not willing to get politically involved, and there's a lot of hard feelings out there. So people are just feeling like they want to step back. But it's helped us to understand that perhaps one of the best ways to face that is to set up some ad hoc committees where we can meet with the public and invite people to come in, do surveys, maybe newsletters. We're discussing a whole bunch of ideas. None of those are set in stone, of course, yet, and all of them were bring by the council first, but we're just discussing this now and trying to brainstorm together because we really want to have more connection with the community. We really want to have more input, and before we would say, oh, we like this design, we want as many people as possible from the community to say, we like this design, and kind of get majority votes going so that we feel like we're really representing what people here want. I'm new to Blue Lake, I have no idea what anyone wants. So I need to talk to people. So the best way we can do that without worrying about the Brown Act is to form smaller committees and open them up to the public. Maybe have potlucks or pizza parties and just have some fun and talk about stuff together. So that's a big thing that we're looking at. We're also on our agenda was the fire hydrants. And there's so many beautiful ones that are already done, and there's more. There's a really great one that's being painted at they have Del Arte. Oh, it's great. You should stop by and see that one too. But yeah, there's more out there. So if anyone from the community is listening to this, there's people here. You don't have to be an artist. You can use stamps. You can use kids. You can use whatever you want, dogs. But get out there and paint some beautiful fire hydrants because there are quite a few more that are left. And that procedure is just to go to the City Hall and get an application and get paints from Glenn once you're approved in that order. And then we have some soft recommendations for the City Council on AI use and land acknowledgement. None of us on Arts and Heritage feel like we're in any position to make any really strong recommendations, but it's something that when your plate clears at some point, you might take a look at. So the AI ones, can I go couple of seconds over?
Go.
So the AI ones is we would recommend soft recommendation, the arts and any arts or graphics that are submitted to the City Council, to any commissions, or to the city as a whole that would be used for the public. They should disclose that AI was used, and then the appropriate, whatever they were submitted for, councils, commissions, whatever, could decide on a case-by-case basis if they feel comfortable with the AI use rather than making a blanket policy. That's what our soft recommendation is. And land acknowledgement, we're still working on a soft recommendation there, so if you have any ideas, please reach out. And happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Any further public comment?
Hello.
Who is speaking? Becky did, but she's muted herself.
Becky, did you want to talk?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. I'm sorry about that. Just trying to figure out my phone. So yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know that I turned in something on the Parks and Rec. I had went to the skating rink here at the beginning of this month, and what I saw was I wasn't happy with. So I just wanted to let the public know that maybe they should really look into what's going on there and let the council know that, just go over and take a real good look at the floors, at the concession stands, what the kids are sitting in, and go check out the employees as they're working. That would just be a good thing for everybody to do. So I'd like to just say that, and good going, Angela. I think we, need to stick together. All right. But anyway, thank you, everybody. All right, bye.
Thank you. Elise, what was that?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify a little something about minutes being published for the public. We did have a problem for quite a few years. The first 2 years I was on council, we had a terrible backlog. And if you look at the website now, you'll see that in all of the year 2022, there's only one meeting that has minutes published. And a year ago, I looked at the website and I counted how many meetings in 23 and 24 had minutes published, adopted minutes published, and there were very, very few. Some of those have since been published, but we regularly were many months behind on our minutes coming to the council for the first 2 years I was on council. So Evelyn, I'm happy to go back and show you my records when I did look at the website a year ago, and I can show you exactly how many were indeed published at that time. And so I welcome you to come and to tell us what we're doing wrong, but
I just pointed out the specific dates. Those are the dates I'm talking about.
Right.
I've looked at the website and they're not there.
Maybe the conversation came out that. All right. Moving on to the next item. Last call for public comment. All right, moving on to item number 5, the consent agenda. Approval of action minutes for special meeting held November 19, 2025.
I do want to note that there are a couple of corrections that I received from Councilmember Scafani pertaining to, I didn't hear I heard Robinson, not Robertson. So I have that, but Michelle, you probably have a few if you want to, okay.
No,
but I did have hers.
The only comment I was gonna say is, I think maybe, I know that Rebecca was there, but anyway, she made some comments, but I appreciated the action minute format. I think, Emily, did you help with these minutes? You just did them?
Yeah.
Well, I like the succinctness of them and all of the line items being very clearly bolded, and I liked the format, easy to read. It was appreciated on my. But other than that, I don't have any. And I guess the only correction again would be that number 9 would be Tuesday, November 25th instead of November 23rd on item number 9. And
Oh, did I get
line-
it there too? Wait.
90 something.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard you say 9.
Yeah,
Yes.
item number 9, yeah, but
So for some reason, I have in my head
that's okay.
December 23rd,
Right.
and that's my default right now. So yeah,
Okay.
touch me. Because I've done it more than once.
Yeah, no, it's
So if I can characterize a couple of the other changes just real quick that were transmitted to me. One is that on line number 96, I used the word considered. It should have been continued. It was an auto kind of populate. With respect to public comment received, the correction was made from Sean Robinson to Robertson. Naomi Bale should have been Rebecca Collins. So
Got it.
got that
Okay.
correction. Kevin Fisher, who was here a moment ago, was present, as well as Jean Lynch. Because I started engaging in some of the conversations, I was losing tracking who was speaking.
that was a rough one. Yeah, that was a rough one.
Oh, everybody did great, all things considered. So I will make those changes.
Any other small-
I would move to approve the corrections already noted.
Second.
Are you gonna open this to public? Thank you.
Public comment on the minutes?
Oh, I just have one correction on line 52. Please spell my name correctly, Adelene. It's spelled correctly on the other items, but not that.
My apologies.
Same line, Julie Christie.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, same line, number 52, Julie Christie is.
Got an E on the end.
Any other public corrections? Anyone on Zoom? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the minutes with the amended corrections. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Moving on to item number 6.
Item number 6. So,
Revised draft fiscal year 25-26. Maybe Jeff, would you like to fill us in on this?
yeah, we can do some fill in. So first, I do want to note that the budget is being presented in a new format, and while it's been reviewed in part by the city's accountant as well as the ad hoc committee, I was the person who kind of built things together, and so recognizing that there may be a funny thing that happens with formula or linking cells. So if something seems off, then let me know, because I can get back in and see if I made an error in the formula or in linking some of the cells. Basically, all the numbers that you see that are on this chart, they all link back to worksheets. So this is like the simple, these aren't static. You can go into I can go into the back of the worksheets, change the assumptions, and everything will auto-populate from there. So it's just, it was time consumptive, but it was really designed to help make a more straightforward and transparent understanding of our budget. So what I want to let council members know is that the presentation that you're going to see was placed onto the website last week after the meeting in anticipation that people would be able to watch it, kind of get their heads kind of wrapped around some of the format changes as well as some of the big picture items. And I don't really need to chat a whole lot in the moment because we've got it here on this presentation, and we can open up and have a larger conversation when we are complete. So with that, I'm going to ask Emily to go ahead and hit the play button, and we will go from there. I've never done it this way, so if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll never do it again. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I will be presenting the key elements and recommendations for the revised draft fiscal year 25-26 budget, with the goal of providing a comprehensive overview while prioritizing transparency and fiscal responsibility. The presentation has been structured to offer insights into our current financial status, potential challenges, and strategies to achieve a balanced budget. The presentation will take approximately 20 minutes, and afterwards there will be an opportunity for questions and discussion. So with that, let's get started. The presentation topics will include the budget process used to date, the approach to the general fiscal year 25-26 budget, an introduction of the revised budget, an organization chart, the recommendations from the Budget Ad Hoc Committee, and finally, the discussion and direction that we're going to be looking for from council. Initial budget discussions were introduced at the March 25th council meeting, and there were additional discussions at 5 later meetings. However, draft figures and detailed staff presentations were either limited or absent. There was a special budget focus meeting that was held on May 3rd. However, neither the city manager nor the finance manager attended. On June 27th, council approved continuing resolution 1237, which extended the 24-25 budget for a 60-day period pending the draft presentation of the fiscal year budget. On July 3rd, the draft budget was submitted and council provided guidance for fiscal adjustments. On August 26th, a second continuing resolution was approved, which extended for another 60-day period, and they also formed an ad hoc budget committee. On October 28th, a third extension was approved through a continuing resolution, awaiting key financial data from the city's accountant to finalize the presentation. Traditionally, the draft budget is presented to council during the spring months. This year, the draft budget was received July 3rd. The draft budget used fiscal year 24-25, using projected actuals ending April 30th with an assumption of a 1% growth rate that was applied to certain revenues. An ad hoc committee was appointed at the August 26th meeting and met several times with staff to review line items, address concerns, and approve accuracy. This revised budget uses projected actuals based through June 30th of 2025, resulting in some differences just based on the revised revenues and expenditures that were received in May and June. This accounts for most of the general ledger adjustments in the budgetary figures from the July version that was presented to council. To improve transparency and understanding, staff will present a revised budget format layout by fund and department, along with specific general ledger information instead of the group references. The revisions to the budget also included costs for the city manager recruitment services, settlement costs related to the previous city manager separation, which was paid out over the fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26, a revised salary adjustment for the city manager, an $80,000 FRMS payment obligation, which is proposed to be spread out over 18 months, which would be $40,000 per fiscal year, a shift to $75,000 from legal costs related to the housing element number 6 into planning for housing element number 7 planning. The recommended shifting of projected costs from legal to planning is due to the tentative memorandum of understanding with the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the city's avoidance of further legal costs associated with housing element number 6. There are also minor reductions to the Park and Recreation's department budget and legal and county costs that are associated with holding a special election for the recall efforts. The city's total projected revenues are approximately $2,712,825. This total includes proprietary, general funds, special use, and the Dental Vision Fund. Proprietary funds are represented by the water and sewer funds, and proprietary funds are rate supported, and they are used specifically to support water and sewer services. General funds are the source of funding for the primary operations of the city, providing flexibility to provide a wide range of services. General funds are expended at the discretion of both the state mandates as well as council discretion and priorities. Special use funds are designated for specific purposes such as the solid waste and transportation projects, and expenditures of those funds are typically restricted to their designated areas. There are also some additional funds which are in various specialized accounts for specific financial activities such as the Dental and Vision Fund. The general fund accounts for approximately 38% of the city's total income, amounting to $1,041,000. The major revenue fund sources are derived from property and sales taxes, which is the largest share at 34%, fees from park and recreations, which makes up 18% of the revenue, and state and county grants, and that comprises approximately 17% of the general fund. Unlike proprietary funds, again, such as the water and sewer, General fund revenues are allocated at the discretion of the city council, and that provides flexibility to fund the various programs and services. And rate and fee adjustments are periodically necessary in order to ensure that costs are covered and that they maintain the financial stability of the budget. Total estimated expenditures are approximately $2,919,365. These projections are primarily based on prior year expenses with some adjustments for anticipated programs or projects. The preliminary projected deficit stands at approximately $206,541. Because projected expenditures are developed primarily based on prior year expenses, some occasional adjustment for anticipated expenditures, programs, and projects, the primary limitation of this approach is that projected expenditures are based on past expenses, which may or may not account for unexpected changes or new priorities. This can lead to underfunding of emerging needs or overestimating future costs, reducing the overall accuracy and flexibility of the budget. As we review the budget, I want to highlight that the current situation was influenced by a variety of factors that are beyond the immediate city council's control. And those include prior practices of relying on prior year expenditures, infrequent updates to program fees, and broader economic uncertainties like federal funding changes and trade policies which are affecting the city's sales tax revenue. Addressing these challenges are going to require a collaborative approach. Staff is focused on identifying solutions, whether through expenditure adjustments, revenue strategies, or fee updates, in order to ensure a balanced and sustainable budget. Your guidance is going to be essential as we work towards finalizing a budget that is going to meet the City of Blue Lakes and community's needs. Looking a little closer at general fund expenditures, general fund expenditures are $1,211,902, with allocations spread out and supporting city department activities. For example, Department 180, which is the general government, represents 26% of the expenditures, followed by the Recreations Department at 23% and Park Facilities at 15%. Public Works at 11% and Planning at 10%. And the remaining of the departments are represented at less than 4% of the total expenditures. The current budget format has been used consistently for approximately the last decade. Each sheet represents a different fund balance with totals listed accordingly. Many expenditures are grouped, which makes the budget easier to compare, but has some notable drawbacks. There's a lack of an overall summary. There is no single consolidated statement of revenue, expenditures, or priorities that are stated for the upcoming year. The multi-page layout with grouped line items makes it difficult to clearly understand the organization's overall operations, projects, and financial health. And the current format lacks a multi-year budget or forecasting, limiting the ability to take proactive steps towards anticipated future financial conditions. Presented this evening is a revised budget format developed to provide a clearer view of the big picture while allowing for detailed department level reviews. Each line item will have a reference number. Please use these numbers for inquiries to facilitate quick follow-up during discussions. And you'll note that those are located on the left and far right side of the sheets. There is consistent referencing. The layout includes references to the general ledger number, account name, and the department fund, which are all aligned with the city's accounting system and the financial report formats. Under the general fund, revenues are organized by department, with totals for each department clearly indicated here with the highlighted yellow arrows. The figures shown here with the yellow circles represent fiscal year 24-25 actuals ending June 30th of 2025, which enables a comparison with the proposed 25-26 budget. There is also a percentage change between the historic and the proposed figures, and that percentage change is displayed to help review and analyze budget shifts and facilitate questions or clarifications. For a closer look, this is the general fund, referred here as Fund 10. Total revenue and expenditures by department are summarized, and here you will see that the revenue is identified at $1,041,254, and the expenses equate to $1,211,902, resulting in a negative balance of $170,000. This fund summarizes special funds 25 through 44, and the fund revenues totals $410,435, with projected expenses at $355,033, leaving a total balance of $55,000. For the water operating fund, revenues are estimated at $597,426, and projected expenses are $727,540. This results in a negative balance of approximately $130,000. For some historic context, the fiscal year 24-25 budget for the water operating fund was also negative, totaling $79,000 in its preliminary stage. The projected increase in the deficit includes an additional $30,000 that's been allocated for system repairs based on prior year expenditures as well. With the sewer operating fund, revenues are estimated at $593,408, and expenses are projected at $604,695. A deficit of approximately $11,000, which makes this the first time the sewer fund is expected to operate at a small loss. A key factor of this deficit is partly due to an anticipated annual loss of $75,000, which is related to the installation of a wastewater effluent meter by the Blue Lake Rancheria. For the dental, vision, and funds, revenues are anticipated at $7,800, and expenses are estimated at $8,610,000, leaving a negative balance of approximately $810. This is a self-funded account with revenue which is generated through payroll deductions from employees. Expenses are based on employee utilization of dental and vision services and the submission of those claims for reimbursement. This approach illustrates one of the weaknesses of relying on prior year expenditures as the base for budget development. It may be that we will see a reduction of claims that are submitted because of services that have already been rendered, no longer necessitating the same degree of expenditure by employees for dental or vision work. The city employs 10 full-time employees. Additionally, there are 5 regular part-time employees. The team also includes several seasonal type recreational specialist employees and a temporary office assistant who typically works once a year, primarily related to the annual auto show. The recreational specialist roles are dependent upon the programs that are undertaken by the recreations department. The city does not currently have an official organization chart. However, a new version has been prepared for you. This chart differs from the typical public agency organization charts because it includes references to key consultants that are integral to the city's services. Specifically, you're looking at a contract with a accounting consultant for the finance department and a city engineer and planner under the Public Works umbrella, as well as general counsel. With respect to law enforcement and animal control, the city has an agreement with the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office to perform policing activities and animal control services. This chart illustrates how staff time is distributed across the various services, projects, and programs within the city. Unlike the traditional organizational chart with neat static boxes, this view provides a more accurate picture of where staff is spending their time. The Water and Sewer Division consumes approximately 50% of the total staff time, with the remaining hours primarily dedicated to either the Park and Recreations departments and the general city services. The city's total salary and compensation costs are estimated at $1,045,000. Sharp eyes may denote a discrepancy in health insurance costs between the fiscal year 25-26 budget sheet, which is included in your packet, and the amount shown here. The difference is primarily due to the FRMS payment obligation, which is an estimated $40,000 out of this fiscal year, combined with the standing amount for projected health insurance costs. Personnel costs represent approximately 38% of the overall budget, and this percentage is within the acceptable range for public agencies, where the average personnel cost is approximately 41% of the budget. To address the anticipated deficit of $541,000 deficit and work towards a balanced budget, several steps are essential. The city needs to develop a transparent budgeting process to improve clarity and accountability. Ensure that the city prioritizes cost reductions and eliminates unnecessary expenditures. Identify and pursue revenue-generating opportunities. To collaborate with staff to improve expenditure controls. Prioritize essential programs and projects to the maximum impact. To regularly review financial policies and internal controls, and maintain consistent financial oversight and review through regular. There are a number of recommendations for budget and financial management which are being recommended, and they've been broken up into immediate actions and some longer term actions. First is the implementation of pre-authorization of all expenditures, and this is a practice which was implemented a little over 2 weeks ago. We recommend that all printing be done in black and white to reduce cost, as color printing has been significantly more expensive. To strive for cost recovery by updating fee structures, specifically updating the water and sewer rate study. Adjust building permit fees. The last update was performed in 2011. To revise the park and recreation fees, including facility rentals, special events, business permits, and animal licenses. To consider suspension of expenditures on less critical capital projects, such as completion of the town square and the bike park. And to explore temporary drawdowns from reserve funds where possible. In terms of some longer term goals, to review programs and administrative efficiencies, ensure all project and program proposals include an estimated annual cost, the funding source, whether the project is state mandated, it's related to health and safety, or if it's discretionary in nature. To establish a general fund reserve and to replenish the water and sewer funds to the stated goals. And then, of course, there's to actively pursue economic development opportunities. In terms of some next steps, I would encourage the council to receive any additional comments from ad hoc committee members, and then have council discussion in order to provide direction to staff so that we can finalize the fiscal year 25-26 budget with the aim of returning to council with a finalized budget by a specified date, no later than December 23rd, but perhaps sooner. And the goal, of course, is to ensure stable funding and expenditure levels, allowing for the continuation of city services and fulfillment of financial obligations. I'm certainly open to any questions and feedback to refine and suggestions to improve the overall budget plan. Thank you. I guarantee you, if I had tried to give that, it probably would have taken twice as long. Just, you know, I figured that might be the most expeditious way in which to get the information out. And probably more importantly, it's available on the website. People can go back and watch it. It doesn't address kind of the diving into the weeds, which I fully expect that we will do, but at least it provides a landscape for which we're going to try to navigate. This afternoon, ad hoc committee members did meet. I did not have an opportunity to review these latest, recommendations. So I would suggest, before asking me any specific questions, you might want to go ahead and introduce some of your items, and that might help to put some parameters in our conversation as a whole.
Go ahead and give them that.
Well, we had some recommendations, priorities to focus on, and some are what we consider to be critical, which we later. And then some were just looking at timelines, and we feel it's important to take immediate steps to reduce non-critical discretionary spending and preserve the remaining finances and the position of the city, to restore the capital reserves, which Jill had mentioned in the presentation. And that would be due to the structural deficits and significant losses. And we believe that it is important for us to take these steps so that we can preserve what money we have and plan for the upcoming issues that are going to happen from the state and the federal government, and that there will be cuts. And monies won't be readily available in grants. It looks that way, and so it's important for us to plan for that and really consider it.
I guess we're probably pitching this back and forth. Yeah, I think the overall theme is we have to come up with a safety net in short order and address some of these ongoing issues that have developed through the years with the budget. As we talked about, I think it was at the last regular council meeting, the water operating fund is a particular concern. That's Fund 60, where just 8 years ago it had a projected fund balance of over $1 million. That's an operating fund. That's not even a reserve fund. And so in addition to the yearly expenditures that were exceeding, we also drew down, and the last projection would be that this year we would have about 200,000 of that remaining. We don't even have that. So I can't stress enough how important it is that we begin to rethink, and a rate study could be part of that. But, and as you'll see as we begin to go into some of the emotions and then the actions, we as a council and as a public have to have a clear picture about how we got where we are. It's unfair to just say, wow, we spend more than we're taking in, so let's just charge more and that takes care of it. We have to understand where that's slipping through our hands, where we can make some improvements. And this is my plea to staff and to the public and fellow council members, is that we really put our heads together and work on this together. We can't do it if we're pushing and shoving each other. But that water operating fund is just one issue. And Jill, I think I see something different with the sewer operating fund. It already was trending. It's not in deficit, but it was operating at a deficit every year. It was baked in to the budget to spend more than it was taking in, and that's taken that balance down. When we look at whether it's the general fund or these enterprise funds, or the staffing issue or department, we try to establish like guiding principles. Terry and I think that we are kind of suggesting some priorities. Since this council didn't have an opportunity last year to set priorities, to have a visioning with the community, Right now, we're having to shrink that scope down and say, what are our priorities for the city, for this budget? Terry, do you want to take that?
So under the recommended motions, we believe that it is really important as we move forward as council to make sure we put things in motions, because sometimes when we just state that we have an interest, it is hard for that to be in a format where we can say what's the bottom line. And so number one on the critical issue is to have a motion to create a special use fund that's not part of the general fund for the bike park. So it can track all donations, expenses, staff time, all engineering plans and permits, all materials, equipment, rentals, consumables, and all upkeep and maintenance. And it can track volunteer hours for future grant applications. So we are suggesting that so that we can keep track of the bike park and expenditures. If it's in a special fund, then we should get reports on that quarterly. And then number two, the critical next motion would be that we initiate some forensic audits to look into some of the funds and the way we're spending money. And Kat, I know you had some really great ideas about how this would work, but it would be the fund, the water operating fund, which is Fund 60, the sewer operating fund, our parks, facility and recreation funds, to review the use of budget amendments over the last 10 years and review all recurring rental lease properties, to include the fair market value, electric, gas, water, sewer, and garbage, and maintenance costs on those rental properties.
I think you're getting it. These are, like I said, with the recommended motions, but we're trying to focus more sharply on guidance and direction to staff. And if there was that small section that we missed, Terry, the priorities that we're trying to use to guide us is our operational ability, so that we have appropriate staffing levels and equipment that staffing could need in order to do their jobs. The infrastructure needs, including water, sewer, streets, and stormwater drainage. Another priority is fiscal policy review and improved reporting cycles so that we don't end up where we are now. Community visioning, and an update to the general plan. And that community visioning and update to general plan might seem a little bit different because in a sense they're not critical, and yet they're the most critical. Because where we are today in part is because it's been a hodgepodge of activities and efforts, and some of them counter to each other. So I think as we look at the budget that we have, I would suggest to the council that we consider some funding, if not for this year, for the following years, for the actual community visioning and update to the general plan. That said, did you want to pick up, or did you want me to get some there?
I think so.
Oh,
She said go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thank you. All right, so another, I think we just have a couple more on the critical list that we really are hoping our fellow council members will consider. We spend a lot of time with this. A motion to reset the Parks and Rec budget expenditure levels. The expenditures have ballooned where they used to range about $224,000 to $236,000 combined. And you can see that in like 2018, 2019, then you can see it again in 2022 and 23. We know that we have a hiccup with COVID, but now we're having a budget presented for $460,000 combined. And so that's a ginormous amount of our general fund, which are discretionary funds, at a time when we have zero backup in our water operating fund. And as we know, we've already seen how we've had some, I'd call them small level infrastructure failures, maybe like $50,000 here or there. You know, we're one moment away from something major that could take us into the $100,000 or several $100,000. we're suggesting to the council that we begin to position ourselves now so that we aren't in a position that we have to go out for loans at probably higher interest rates, because we aren't necessarily showing the best fiscal position right now. And we, as everyone else is saying, as we're seeing in HCOG, as we're seeing at REDAC, as we're seeing across the nation, there is a contraction throughout the economy. There's not just money being cut off, it is being clawed back. And so this is our time that we have to evaluate where we're going to spend our nickels and dimes and pennies. So with that, on item number 3, how we got from averaging about 225 to 236,000 to 460,000 is, as Jill had mentioned previously, it looks at the previous year's expenditures and says, oh, okay, well, maybe it'll be about a 2% growth, we'll put that in there and carry that over. Unfortunately, Jill, can you share where that hiccup came in? Or?
Oh, certainly. In conversations with Scott, he's the accountant. I said, you know, could you explain to me what transpired around some of the increases around park and recreations? And I do want to make sure, you know, it's not park and recreations, it's park and recreations, two separate and distinct. And basically the city was able to receive some ARPA funds. Most public agencies, many private agencies received like this, you know, nice little windfall during COVID. And so monies were allocated to different places, including funds that went into park and recreations. And because of that prior year expenditure, and I actually don't know for what the duration was, because I need to circle back and continue my conversations with Scott. But basically using that prior year expenditure, it was simply rolled forward and it was simply budgeted as that. So while the funding may have come over the course of, you know, a couple of fiscal years, at the point that the ARPA funding went away, we continued to spend as if that money was there. So it was just coming from the general fund as a whole. Some people would call it sort of, you know, budgeting by autopilot. It's like, I know how much is coming in and this is how we're going to do it. It's actually a part of developing budgets. You know, but the next piece is doing some forecasting and taking a look at your trends and making some corrections based on the priorities of your community. So, so that's really where the big growth happened, and I think that's been a big, you know, question for, you know, what happened that there was such an expansion, and it's like the money is there, so we'll continue to spend it. It's been allocated, I should say, and we'll continue to spend it.
Thank you, Jill. So to kind of close out on a couple of points for item 3, I want you to be aware that the way that it kind of evolved also is that the more that we budgeted and expenses, the greater the loss each time. And parks and recreation, in my view, and I think standard, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not expected to be a break-even proposition. It's a service to the community, but we do want to bake in things like our cost recovery plans. I know that we're looking at fee schedules and such, but there also has to be consideration for, first, how much of your general fund, what percentage of your general fund is going to, because that's also where your general government is. That's positions like your city clerk, that's positions like audio visual in here. You know, that's like phone systems. There's a lot of other things that would come out of general funds that these are all competing for the very small pool of dollars. And just to share with you, in 2018, 2019, when expenditures were budgeted about $225,000, and the same in 2019, 2020, expenditures budgeted for $229,000, it was expected, it was baked into that budget that 30% of that expenditure would just be a loss. 30%. So 30% of 225,000. So roughly, you know, $88,000, $90,000. You don't expect that to come out. But what happens, as you see, is the more that we're spending, that we started going to expenditures, look at 2020, 21, 22, suddenly we're looking at 60% loss at a time when also our expenditures are going up and we're losing a greater portion of that. So where that kind of leads us right now, a couple of things, but we're proposing the expenditures for park facilities and recreation as they're combined is resetting it back to $236,000, which we're using that as a basis as prior years before this big bump to 407 and then 460,000. So we'd be looking at that 236,000 plus 6%. We're trying to get some kind of acknowledgement to increase in cost for a total combined expenditure of $250,000.
And I think it's important to note, Jill had pointed out that the general fund, the revenues for that are $1,041,000. And the budget is fairly close for parks and recreation at 467. So that's, getting close to half. I mean, it's under that, but so when we're talking about making some decreases, that would be why.
Jill, just a quick question. Have we found any other instances where they got funding for
I'm sorry.
Have there been any other instances like Parks and Rec where they've gotten funding and then continue to pull past the original funding source? Or
I think you see that in a few different ways. You'll see it a little bit in and I'm stumbling here because I don't have an explanation, but certainly within the 8939 fund in last year and the year prior, there seemed to be higher expenditures. I want to say it was around 35,000, but you're only receiving about 10,000 a year in revenue for that. And I'd asked Emily, what those could have been used for, because the city, how do I put this? I was on HWMA for a lot of years, and the engagement by the cities of Blue Lake and Riodale and Ferndale are very minimal. Their board members are very engaged, but not so much at the staff level. So I couldn't quite remedy what the money was being spent on. It is not for the free greenway stays, because that's actually collected in another portion. Because I thought that might be part of it. There have been some pretty significant increases with the green waste processing. I haven't gotten kind of an explanation, but it does carry forward. And so I did have some conversations with Scott trying to get that. You see this play out on many of the levels. Internally to the organization, you're probably looking at the person who has the closest level of budget sort of literacy. She's really been able to develop an understanding, and even then she's going to tell you, I really know very kind of little. I've been kind of taking it up, but she's getting us. The budgetary literacy, if you will, within the organization is pretty minimal. If I ask people, what does our budget look like? Nobody can really tell me. Well, how are you spending money? Well, we're told that the money is available. So there's a component that we're really working on internally to have more conversations around the expenditures or the sources of revenues. How can we be doing things better? So it's going to be a lift. So it really has been based on, well, they say that there's money in there, but it hasn't been on the basis of, well, we anticipate that we need to see an upgrade to the SCADA system. So my first question is, so has money been budgeted? And the answer is no. And it's like, okay, so how are we going to be looking at funding that or positioning ourselves so that we can fund it? Because we'll need to go put those out to bid. So I don't know if that kind of answers it. I do have a question after you complete your presentation on a couple of items, specifically as it pertains to the forensic audits.
There was one other grant that kind of complicates the Parks and Rec, in a little bit, and that was a Parks per capita grant. That was $177,000 that came in, I believe was spent over the course of roughly 2 years. So that was there in 22, 23 and fell off the books, I think, at the beginning of fiscal year 24, 25.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, there's three parts to that grant. There's the Gymkhana grounds, the horse arena area, the courts there. There's Trash Hall as a whole, and then Fairfield Park as a whole. And each amount, or each location has its own funding amount, but they're all under that state parks per capita grant.
Right, and that totaled 177,000.
Yeah.
So that was a big boost, you know, to, on the revenue side.
Well,
For those years.
that grant. is all about.
Yeah.
So the revenues and the expenditures were listed within that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Can you guys speak up a little bit?
Oh,
I mean,
sorry.
not
Yeah.
continue, in the future.
Okay.
Okay,
Did you, the ad hoc want to continue the presentation?
yes, please. I'll hit 4 and 5.
Okay.
Number 4, we have a suggested motion to reduce the planning fund 220 budget from 75,000. This is for planning work on the 7th cycle to reduce it to 30,000. We want to show good faith, but we also have several years on this. And as long as it's not mandated that specific amount, that's our recommendation to the council. And then the second would be to solicit proposals to contract the housing element of development. I think that's already in the works. Thank you. Yeah, some of these ideas you'll recognize as your own, Jill.
I also want to note, just for purposes of conversations with members of the community, we introduced an item at the last meeting for the submittal of the grant application to HCD. And it looks like we may be able to broaden what our potential grant application would be, so that it would be inclusive of some of the planning costs, in addition to the possibility of securing some capital improvement funds for the sewer division. So obviously, we're not going to budget that in here, but it's something that we're going to be pursuing. And if the city is awarded that money, then you can, you know, do a mid-year budget review if that's appropriate, or it gets folded into the next fiscal budget. So those two things are absolutely in the works.
Great, thank you very much. It's almost as if I have a crystal ball here. And then number 5. We suggest a motion to direct staff to provide and present to council a comprehensive fee schedule from Parks and Recreation. And we hope to have that ready by the regular council meeting in January of next year. That's, I expect that you'll give us some feedback on that, Jill, if that's possible or not. But what we're looking for is to see a change. I know that you guys already have this underway, where instead of saying, well, here's our fee schedule, so this is what it costs, taking a really far back view and not just saying, well, this is our old fee and here's where it needs to be, but looking at it with the view of cost recovery, to say what all is it costing us to be able to afford to provide or support this event, or to host at this facility, or the use of the arena, and for X amount of hours by X amount of people. So I know with Jill's experience at the fairgrounds, she's already helped us see, you know, between small events and big events, and that changes the math, so to speak. But we hope that we would be able to encourage council to give staff some direction on what we would like to see with the fee schedule and then.
Without quibbling about that particular recommendation, I would like to get a little feedback from Emily. I know that she has initiated some review, and there's some preliminary conversations with the Park and Recreation Commission. I'm a little concerned about the time frame because we're almost in December, and it's all of our windows get really compressed with the holidays, as well as the number of special meetings that we're having. So do you think January is kind of a realistic time frame, or do you think maybe February? I want to manage expectations so that we've got, you know.
Are you winking at her on the side, or February?
Yeah.
I think I could have a better presentation to you in February, to be honest, but there's a deadline, then I could make January work as well. It's up to you. Yeah.
It would be the fourth week in January, so.
Mhm.
I'll have all that time.
Oh, actually, you're not gonna throw her into a special meeting the
Yeah.
first week of January.
Regularly.
And then, this is gonna get into something that we have later in here, but that's also part of the budget development.
Mhm.
So rather than having it landing on our dais, so to speak, at, June, we'd like to start to see numbers much earlier in the year. So that's kind of, we're trying to push things further out. Yeah, thank you. Terry?
And then the next one, instead of being critical, although it is time sensitive, we would like to encourage a motion from the staff to develop a timeline for the budget development for the 26-27 cycle. And this process should include time for council staff and the public to get for input sessions and to be able to set priorities for the next budget. And many cities are starting now or January, February to start developing department budgets. And so what we don't want to see happen is the same thing that happened this last year. And that would be that we get down to a point where we are just being given a budget at the end without a lot of input and discussion about it. So to develop an actual timeline is important. And then the next one is a motion to create a separate special fund for all recurring property rentals and leases, and each property should have its own metering for utilities and separate garbage pickup. So whether it's Mondaway, the caretaker's cabin, Skinner store, the Clemens Field concession stand, and we put power plant with question marks. We know it's not active at this point, but just to be able to take a good look at what is coming in from the rentals and the leases and how those monies for utilities, garbage pickup are all it's affected by the rents that are collected on those properties.
If I can jump in, just in the budget for this year alone for parks and recreation utilities is, which is gas, water, and electric, is over $55,000. So, that's a lot. That's a lot. But I mean, we have fields that we water, there are big buildings that we have. But this is why we're saying, let's, anywhere that we have these facilities, we need to kind of take a look at how we can start to incorporate some efficiencies with those. We can't do it until we're taking them.
And those expenditures in the park and rec budget, or was that just totally separate?
No, that was under Parks and Recreation expenditures.
I do want to offer a little caution on this one. I think we need to take this proposal first for evaluation by the accountant for two reasons. There may be some restrictions or constraints that we aren't aware of, certainly myself. And the other is there's a good portion of the revenue that comes in, which is then put into your general fund that allows you discretion for how those revenues are being spent. What you're proposing to do is lock it up, potentially. So lock it up to be used only within that special fund. That's okay, but that might be a conversation you want to have as far as a larger engagement to understand. Well, to really avoid any unintended consequences of something that sounds really good without necessarily knowing some of the inner workings on that one. Okay. And in particular, I'm thinking Powers Creek. I think that there may have been, I feel like I read something somewhere that showed that there were some constraints.
Yeah, there's Powers Creek District, and there's like 3 little funds in there.
Yeah, but there's actually something that was done in the course of potentially an ordinance or something like this, and so that's why I want to make sure that before we just like plunge headlong actually look at it, not move forward with like implementation immediately.
Those are great points. Something we had noticed in the expenditures and well, in this case in the revenues is that it makes sense perhaps to have, rent for the Clemensfield concession stand fall under Parks and Rec. On the other hand, it's not called out independently. We don't see that appear anywhere in our budget. But then we have for the Skinner store, but that's shown as revenue for park facilities. When it seems, if we were to put it anywhere, that would be general government, because that seems to be its primary use and not relevant to Parks and Rec. So, what we try to do is get as clear a picture as possible of those revenues that are generated from park facilities or recreation facilities, then be housed under those, and those that are coming and originating elsewhere to be appropriated elsewhere or designated elsewhere.
So this Emily and I had a kind of a broad conversation maybe about a month ago or so. When we use the word facilities, City Hall, Skinner store, courtyard is notwithstanding, but does the Parks Department, are our facilities underneath the responsibility of the Parks Department or Public Works? And there seems to be a little bit of a gray area. Go for it.
There is crossover, for example, when the flags at City Hall get tattered, Parks are the one who pays for that. Things of that, it comes out of that area. Public Works may request me to deal with it or to fix it, but when we buy those.
And likewise, when there was some of the work that was done on the roof of Crash Hall, right? So it's like that's a Parks building, but so there's the teasing out isn't necessarily intuitive, and so I would just be a little cautious, on that as well. And maybe somewhere deeper in some of your documents, there's an explanation for how and where things are going to be. As sometimes you have mission drift, and every time you have a changeover in leadership, there might be a slight interpretation of how things should be managed, and that happens. It's a real thing. So it might be a good opportunity to focus in on more.
Number 8.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I said number 8.
Oh, number 8. I thought you said, do you want a break? It's been a long day, I'm sorry.
Okay. This one is just going under cost recovery and liability. Again, we're kind of considering all these properties that are either, recurring rent or lease, be evaluated at their charged at fair market value. And this kind of moves into policy too, that properties are available for rent or lease that be publicly noticed and advertised, that the user / the tenant must present and keep current their own insurance, including renter's insurance, if it's a residence, and all licenses, permits, et cetera, commensurate with any business activities that are conducted on premises. So in other words, if we're going to rent to a business to operate as a business, that they're compliant with all permits, licenses, et cetera. Because we don't want to house and rent to a business that isn't complying with the law, and then potentially that can come back on us. And then, like I said, having these at fair market value, I think that we have some structures that as we look at the rents on these, for instance, with the Clemensfield concession stand, with a rent of $400 a month, and then reduced to $300 a month in the winter because it's the off season, and then sometimes eliminated altogether because it was closed in order to get permits or some changes. This is a facility that all electricity, all water, all gas, and garbage, if gas is used there, and garbage, and maintenance, repairs, and upkeep, all falls on the city. This was not offered to any other resident or business. This wasn't advertised. And these are the type of expenditures, to be very frank, that we have to examine, we have to look at. And this is part of resetting, for any of these properties that we have. Making sure that we're covered from a liability perspective, making sure that we are not paying, if we're paying $55,000 in utilities, we have to look at where some of that is going. We cannot afford to provide utilities for a for-profit business. So that's simple.
So an additional comment for a little consideration is, I think that from a policy perspective, that's a really sound one to move forward with, and I think the other component is developing agreements that have those standards built in. And I don't have a sense of, what the processes have been, but working closely with your general counsel to make sure that you've got that, so that you're also ensuring that you're not setting things up for an unfair business practice.
Yes.
To other competitors, out of things. So it does.
Yeah, and some of this, frankly, is moving into issues of other funds as well.
Right.
Sorry.
But I do think that both policy and then having a more standard process for the solicitation, as well as the agreements, would be prudent.
So on energy efficiency and independence, we are asking for a motion to have staff solicit estimates for solar on City Hall, and a motion to have PG&E audit our energy consumption and proposal for
Conservation.
Wow. And under time sensitive motion to provide the current balances of general fund, water operating fund, sewer operating fund, and sewer capital reserve fund.
Staff on that one, we do not have spare balances for those funds.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
For the general funds, 10, 36, and 38, and as well as the water operating, sewer operating, and sewer capital reserve fund.
You're looking at okay, so here's where things start getting a little tricky. You don't actually have a budget right now. So if you want to know how far expended you are, we don't actually have a budget right now. So while we can give you those numbers, it's all based on the fact that you're continuing the 24-25 budget. So it's one of the reasons why we really do need to move forward with a budget. We can get information to you. I would need to do a little work on that, but in terms of funds expended to date from like July 1st current, so it'll probably be the end of the month.
When we talk about balances, so there's a fund balance in that we budgeted X amount of dollars and we spent this
Different
much,
balance.
right? And then there's the cash balance, which is the actual money that's there.
Yeah, you've got the word balance is used in a couple different ways depending on what you're looking at. I'm not an accountant, so I don't want to inadvertently muddy the waters, but for instance, let's talk about the sewer fund. The current balance is actually a rollover of a multi-year period. Some years you're making money and eating away at deficit, others you're coming up, and so that's a balance. I interpreted this request to get a sense of if you had a budget that had been approved, that it would be how much is it expended for this fiscal year. So there's different ways to interpret this balance question, and I'm not entirely certain which one you want. I provided you a copy of the fund balances, and that was current to the end of that month. Or excuse me, that would bring you to the projected end of fiscal year June 30th, 2026. If the budget was adopted as it is today.
Right. And what we were looking at, and I apologize if I didn't find it, even though I used my magnifying board.
Oh,
my budget too.
I'm there.
In the sewer reserve fund, that one, yes, the sewer capital reserve fund, 72, should show a balance of about 1.1 million.
That's correct.
That's what we're wanting to also
Okay.
see.
So you
yes.
have those numbers.
Well, what I have.
Oh, you're using that?
No, this is just off of taking every budget that was approved, and it'll have the proposed beginning balance and proposed ending balance. And then it'll show you the projected revenues and the expenditures. And if you take just one of those, you really get in trouble. Kind of like how we did, you look at last year's budget and say, oh, 400,000 was to 460.
Right.
But what it does show is a trend that already in the sewer operating fund, we have been, that beginning balance is getting lower and lower and lower. I think we've been working into a negative that. The concern is that what happened in water, it didn't happen in sewer.
So, on that note, and I don't really want to go sideways, but I do think that we probably need to touch on just a couple things. One is some of the original assumptions that were used for your water and sewer rate study. It sounds like there were some assumptions that were originally put into place that my understanding is did get flagged internally, but not enough to sway the actual direction. So for instance, it folded in the historic water use of the power plant. Power plant is offline. Another one is similar to the wastewater, and with the decision by the Rancheria, and it's in their best interest. I mean, any one of us would want to do it, right? We're all trying to figure out how we constrain our costs, and water coming into a facility does not necessarily mean water coming out 100% at the back end of the facility. And so they have initiated a metering process, so they're not having to pay for that water that's going for agricultural use. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach how you develop your rates, landscaping, credits, things like this. So there's a question around some of that and why your fund balances are looking the way they are now.
So we had a conversation about having a special reserve fund. So say the general fund would have a special reserve fund. And so you would designate an amount of money that needs to be in that fund to protect different things that might happen and unexpected expenses, and have a policy for how you replenish that fund if you spent it down. And so right now we do not currently have that, and so this would be something that would be important for us to establish.
I thought we had one for some reason.
I'm sorry?
I thought we had a special reserve fund.
Yeah, you don't actually have a reserve fund for your general fund.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that would be a really that would be a good thing to put in place. I mean, isn't it just like your regular life, right? Oh, I'm just gonna put $50 in there this year.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know it's there, and you've got to start with baby steps.
Any other comments from the ad hoc or?
We do have some recommended actions. Try to go through those. Really quick. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's go ahead and take a 5-minute adjournment break.
Thank you.
Realize that I'm complaining. Thank you for the reminder. I wasn't gonna have this back on.
Make sure your light's on, keep that nut on.
I didn't.
I know.
Okay.
Hang on, we got Kat. Remind.
Thank you.
Wow, you are so good at this.
You can see.
So these have lights,
Okay.
and I know who has what mic,
All right.
and we are,
We'll be back at 8:09, the ad hoc budget presentation. Continues. More comments or recommendations?
Yeah, the recommended actions, and we know this is a lot. And as we are working forward, on making the budget, one of the things we need to consider is to review, have a council workshop to review the current financial policy. I know there's other policies within the city that need to be updated and look at past audit recommendations, and number two, to develop fiscal policy. So that would be part of that financial policy, is what would your capital reserve funds look like? What are limits on operating fund balances to move to a reserve fund at a certain percentage amount?
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
We don't have any policies in place right now.
Not.
Great.
And we
Say
do,
that again?
so to have,
No, I heard that part. What?
Do we don't have any policies on reserve fund allocations.
Okay, reserve fund. Okay, thank you.
in the, I was reading through the financial manual, and there's not specific information on that.
Great.
Many cities do that. And also having, reserving a percent of any windfall or unrestricted funds. So if you had money left over at the end of the year, how would you allocate that? And it might be, and that would be in your financial policy, would say how much of it would go to a general fund reserve, or to rebuild water funds, or build a public works fund for streets and drainage issues, because we don't have a fund, a special reserve for public works either. So we should look at that.
Well, we are talking about the rate study, so in the council's spare time, another workshop to review rate study for the water and sewer funds and compare those to the findings of a forensic audit, so that we know what was suggested before on the rate studies, and then we have a clearer picture of, you know, where money was spent, where money comes in, specific to, you know, the water fund, the sewer fund, and then we compare those before just starting another rate study. And then kind of as a subset of the overall financial policy, then we have reviewed financial and personnel policies on overtime, which I think that the new city manager has already established that you would have to get noticed in advance and approval, and to certainly take overtime. But in general, these are places where you have staff time and the work does get done, but it's not under optimal circumstances. And so you want to have some kind of trigger that you're not getting into, you're paying 1.5 to 2 times as much for the same amount of work. And then we don't want to, I'm not suggesting that we dive too deeply into the personnel policies, but we have to understand that side of it, you know, on how their compensation is triggered in order for us to understand on the fiscal policy. So as we're saying, like with the overtime, or also with reimbursements, you know, with reimbursements, if you're taking testing and you're not passing that test, most organizations do not reimburse you. So it may have evolved to that, but, you know, our recommendation as ad hoc would be, we need to take a look at that policy. And then also how step increases, you know, what triggers those, because again, those are directly affect the budget. And then placement of new hires on a wage scale. So, you know, I think it behooves us to at least look to the personnel policy or have a city manager make recommendations so that new hires don't just come in and say, Joe's a great guy. Let's put Joe at step 19.
So you have a personnel policy. It is out of date and it needs to be revised in some areas. that last example that you used is a specific policy that all new hires will start out at step one. And so that is where you have a difference as far as, you know, a lot of agencies will say they'll start at step one, they might be able to go up to step two. If you're going to bring somebody in because they have a higher degree of experience or education, then they can bring it to council, right? And then you can review that and you can approve what the recommended step increase would be for that. You don't have that piece, but you do actually have clarity that new hires will start at step one or level one is the case. Your entire personnel handbook needs to be reviewed. There have been enough changes in state law. There have been changes in federal law that, for instance, the Affordable Health Care Act, your policies are not consistent with the Affordable Health Care Act. That's part of what we're trying to clean up with at least one person. There are gaps, and I would say rather than focusing, on these narrow things, you just need to have a comprehensive review. I think there's a few people who have recently retired from some local agencies that might be willing to take something like this up rather than having to go to some of the larger firms that you can spend a lot of money for. But I do think that the personnel policy handbook is pretty much my first go-to. Doesn't matter what the agency is, it's going to give me a really good lay of the land. Then taking a look at what your salary compensation plan is going to be. Your salary compensation plan is not consistent with what PERS used to see. There are a few glitchy things that are in there. So I would say for your incoming person, this needs to be one of those priorities that goes along with the fiscal policy. So they all need to kind of work in sync, if you will. But I've definitely found a few things, and I've had to do a couple of workarounds, working very closely with general counsel, so that we are staying consistent with what the actual rules and regs are now.
Thank you, and you made a lot of really good points, and I think on this recommendation, the action is that we familiarize ourselves with them. We weren't suggesting the action that we take this on and that we're doing all of these changes. We might see some things that we know to bring attention, but this is, I think our thought on this would be that we solicit outside expertise.
Yeah, and having done this a couple of times, it always takes a little bit longer than you expect. It takes about a year to get through all of those pieces, and part of it is coming up to speed and encountering funny, weird things that you can put in the back of your mind as far as, oh, we need to make sure that we're addressing the following things. So, and then you also need to, while I have you all here, you also need to make sure that you're providing adequate time for your staff to review it. While your staff is not represented, you do need to fold in time so that you've got an opportunity for review and feedback and some potential recommendations from them as well.
The review, the policy,
proposed policy.
Employee policy.
Absolutely. It's pretty standard practice being at your public agency. You want to make sure you incorporate that.
You don't have time to take that on.
I'm at 240 hours, my friend.
When does the pumpkin come?
240 hours.
I am.
Yeah, I'm doing my best for you.
Any other?
There's just a few, just okay, about 5, 6, 7.
Sure,
So,
right.
yes. Again, utilities are hit us pretty hard, and we know that in part that's because rates have gone up. And that's the only thing, that's what rates do, they just go up, up, up. So whether it's for water, sewer, gas, electric, garbage, green waste, each of those can be looked at. And this is something that, we could find local resources that might be able to help us, we might have some local knowledge. But for instance, with electric, we could try to identify the largest consumers of electric, and is it suitable for solar, and would it be needed, for battery backup? But beginning to take some of those steps to find out how we can not just one time reduce costs, but begin to keep them down for the future. Then we have, I noticed that with, the park facilities fund versus the recreation fund, we looked to prorate those utilities, we just see that, you know, I mean, we're still working to understand how all of this budget is put together and how we kind of make determinations. But it kind of made sense to us that recreation is also a driver of the consumption of utilities. And so, you know, it seemed a little lopsided to put all of that weight onto facility side when we know that there's another driver on the other side. And then for number 7, consider zero-based budgeting. I had to look this up, I didn't just know it. But as Jill had shared with us earlier, what we've been doing is we take last year's budgets, like, oh, that looked pretty good, better add a little bit, and then we move on. And I think in a really healthy, functioning environment where all things being equal, things are rather stable, it's not a bad way to go, especially if you do forecasting and trends from the past to do some forecasting. But with zero-based budgeting, instead of saying, well, here was your budget last year, so just tweak it and we're gonna use it for next year, you start with nothing and you build out your department. How many staff does it take to be able to, let's just say, you know, that we're making cookies, how many does it take to unload the dough, how many to make the dough, how many to put them in the oven, to take them out, to pack them up, whether it's your labor or your utilities or the equipment that goes in there, is what it allows you, kind of forces you to do is think about every expense that you put or that you cost or incur within your department or activity. And you know, by doing that, it kind of opens up your mind to say, oh, wow, do we really need to do this? And you build that budget out, you still might hit a threshold. It doesn't mean you just build it out and that's what it's going to be. But the idea is that you just don't start from where you were. You have to build it out in a sense from the ground up. It might be a good exercise or consideration for a small department or a particular issue. It's just another way to examine the budget. Some municipalities do this.
And 8, require quarterly reporting on budget actuals. That is actually currently part of our financial policy manual that we do receive that quarterly, and that should include number 9, that should include actuals and fund balances with that, and number 9 to include revenues received along with the warrants and disbursements, and that is part of our financial policy manual for us to receive that on a monthly basis. And number 10, considering a combined position, or just looking at right now, we hire an accountant and we have a person who does the finances, just figures in a lot of data entry, but we don't have anyone in-house who can produce the reports. And so we're suggesting looking at how we budget all that, and would it be fiscally feasible to look at having someone who has the financial expertise to be able to do that, since we are spending about, Jill had said before, about $67,000 to $77,000 a year on an accountant. And then we also have a fiscal manager, a financial manager. If you looked at that, combining that, what does that look like, and would it be more financially feasible for us to do that and be able to have internal reports?
So I think at one point that was discussed that there should be 2 people, because that's part of your internal controls, and have 2 different people working on this. So are you saying to combine the 2 positions into 1 person?
Well, however it looks to do that, we have the financial manager, and we also have 2 people who work on 2 half-time people who work. And however the city manager would look to see how that's done. It seems to be a problem, and I think put a big workload, and we discussed this, on our city manager if they had someone in-house and someone in-house who was their city clerk, and look at how that money is allocated or how that works, could be a great help to the city manager in helping with those staff reports, the financial part of it. The city manager could get that information in real time instead of waiting for an outside accountant.
I have a couple questions for y'all. So first, I want to back up to number 5, which has to deal with utility consumption, which I think is pretty good. I do want to note that for anything that's involving a meter, we may or may not be able to tease things out further unless we're putting in another meter. So that there may be a little bit of the proverbial looking into the crystal ball in order to kind of develop some estimates. I do think when you're talking about some of your energy audits, this is a great role for the Redwood Coast Energy Authority. It's one of the key services that they provide to their members, where they can come out and they can take a look at the energy patterns, do an analysis, and make some recommendations around, let's say, the wastewater treatment plant. You've got some of the aerators that are beginning to age, whether you can potentially rebuild or replace, you may see an overall savings. So I think there's different strategies according to what you may be looking at in terms of the consumer of that energy. You're going to have a harder time if you're talking about trying to tease out what the energy consumption is between the Park and Recreation Crash Hall and the little field house over here, unless they're on separate meters. So I do want to kind of caution on this. So you might want to be taking that into consideration. With respect to zero-based budgeting, I like it in concept. Your staff is so thin right now, and they are so taxed with trying to get things together. I think that it's a great goal, but I would be very mindful of the time that it would take to go through that exercise. And as I indicated earlier when I opened up my conversation, budgetary literacy is something that really needs to be developed in-house. And they don't currently have the expertise for that. So there would need to be a lot of mentoring and development on that. And I don't want to have people get frustrated with the lack of forthcoming information. It wouldn't be because anybody is not wanting to get you the information, they just don't know how to get the information, right? So I want to temper that, and maybe set that as a goal, because that would be a really great thing, or start taking the approach of looking at particular funds and staggering them in and building over a period of some time. With respect to the quarterly reporting, something that I've been talking to Scott about now that he is back and he is working for the city, he's working part-time and we are his only client now. So hopefully we're going to start seeing information forthcoming. The priority right now is to get that 23-24 audit completed. I'm hoping for Friday, he tells me it should be finished up. And then the next thing he's putting together is going to be the restart of those financial reports, those quarterly reports. It'll be coming forward in December 23rd. The goal right now is start with the quarterly, get back up to speed so we can get the information to you guys. We start making more informed, conversations and decisions, but then get it back into the monthly. That information should be presented monthly. With respect to the what you're talking about is a restructure of the finance department. So if you're looking at the potential of consolidating the funds that are using for an outside consultant and beefing up with your existing finance manager, that's really going to be a restructure of the organization. And that's something that your incoming city manager should be tasked with looking at to determine whether or not that's going to be something that's viable. One of the things that I have not heard, and I've seen it made a couple of references, is to the forensics audit. Mm-hmm. Two things. You look at your budget, you've got some funds underneath auditing. That is just for a single year audit. It's not going to be the 2 years that we know is going to have to be put in there, because you're going to be 2 years in arrears. If you're looking at doing a forensics audit, that's going to be even more money than just your standard audit. So I would like some concept of how much money we should be allocating to put in for purposes of the forensic audit. Likewise, the city has spent between 68 and 72,000 a year on the accounting services. But you'll look at the numbers in here, and because it's based on prior year budgets, it's lower than that. Because last year your accountant was out quite a bit of time. So it's a not getting in and being able to do some of those projections or having a stronger sense of that is definitely an issue. So those are two things that concern me as you're talking around some of the financial impacts of those two pieces. I actually think it would be really great to move to having an in-house individual. I think that there would be great benefit to the city. The question is going to be if you're going to be able to find a salary that would be competitive to entice somebody in. And that's going to be a challenge.
On that note, just theoretically, let's say you found the right person. Do you think that there's enough work that is full-time or maybe a 0.8 FTE?
I think that with the number of tasks that you're laying out here and the amount of sort of managing that would need to be done, I think a full-time thing, because I think there's a lot of different, rabbit holes that you could end up going down over the course of, several years. Competitively, you're looking, if you want to bring somebody in, you're probably looking at about 110,000 minimum. So there's some of those considerations to take in mind. There have been some interesting conversations outside of this organization, and taking a look at these small governmental entities that really can't support a full-time person, but the possibility of consolidating resources, let's say City of Trinidad, City of Blue Lake, City of Ferndale, City of Riodale. Those four entities, they've all really struggled to find personnel and the funding and the resources, and maybe by finding some sort of shared agreement. There has been some conversation around the policing component, and in part that's being driven by Sarah, our risk manager. So they've been reaching out on that front to some of the other cities. I don't know necessarily how that looks for Blue Lake and Trinidad in particular, but there's some active conversations around how there could be a share of resources. It opens up a whole host of issues. Sure. Who's employing the person? How do we manage that? I mean, there's a whole host of things that I don't want to oversimplify. Oh, easy peasy. We'll just share it 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
You have no comments?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Not a comment, but I am hoping that with the numbers that you've got in front of us and some of the recommendations that you have, you do have a couple of financial goals, which I presume we would then take back and figure out internally where we could make some modifications that can represent. Has the audit committee been able to identify what your dollar goal was? Like, so are you looking to have was your goal to hit a zero balance, let's say, for the general fund?
Still looking for general.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something because I wasn't necessarily seeing it here.
And then some of these, how much to budget for, a forensic audit. We're not talking comprehensive. We know that this is something that we might have to put out a request for proposal, or
you would absolutely
do some calls here and there and begin to get an idea for that. But I think we could still, it wouldn't hurt us right now to go ahead and budget for that. And I think that that's one of those absolute critical pieces anyway, because it ties into so much of the issues that we have. We've got to find out.
Could I ask that you perhaps consult with your representatives on some of your JPAs to see if anybody has done any sort of equivalent work for that? I did have an occasion where I needed to bring somebody in to do a forensic audit for a very narrow range. I mean, it was like a singular event. I think I spent over $15,000. It was a singular event. But it was a deep dive. We did get some good information, but if you're looking broader, it can really spiral. So maybe you can make some inquiries there to get a little ground truthing for some costs. That particular cost was over 5 years ago, so I wouldn't want to rely on that particular number.
Jill, a question. When we discussed at a meeting, a prior meeting, about the invoices that were outstanding for the bike park, have you been able to find out any more about that? Okay. So
The one I went ahead and authorized payment for, that was from Mercer Fraser, because I was able to substantiate through some email communications. I was able to find those because basically it was a go, and then I spoke with the accounts receivable individual, and he was able to clarify that there was yes, they did make a donation, but it was a donation for transportation, not the hot asphalt mix. The bill that the city received was specific for the hot asphalt mix. They simply waived the transportation fee, so we did get that benefit. So I went ahead and authorized the payment of that $5,000 from Mercer Fraser. I know that I've been approached by Mr. Johnson, and he's going to be stopping by. We'll have a conversation when he comes in.
So we have our spreadsheets, we have the recommendations. I have some questions about some things that are on the spreadsheets.
Go for it.
So in the expenditure, on the expenditure page, under legal for mayor and council, we have $45,000.
Okay, so hold on one second, let me get there. And legal, 45,000, yes.
So 45,000 in mayor and council, and general legal is 40. And under planning, you have a legal amount, and then we have some under sewer and water.
Yes.
So I'm just curious if you could share with us how you decided to share that, and or how you divide those up.
How those were allocated?
Right, and exactly. Well, I mean, I get that Ryan's sitting here, and are we? I mean, is this the legal fee when he sits here? Is it all the different communications he has with all of us and all the work that goes through council?
As well as you've got special attorneys that you've hired for the housing element. You've had attorneys that you've been using for the DAMCO process. So Ryan's costs have been associated with everything that, people have contacted him about. He sat in here and for, closed sessions. These funds are based in large part. We did make a couple of revisions, and I don't have that worksheet in front of me. But a lot of this was based on prior year expenditure. And I say prior year expenditure, we were also taking a look at how much money has been spent from July 1st to current. So there's, so that one's actually kind of massaged a little bit because you've incurred considerable legal expenses.
Okay.
Any more questions about the other funding sources?
Wait a second.
I was just telling her, she mentioned sewer and water and also.
Okay.
One of the fund, I forget what was coming.
No, I was just seeing the legal was just spread out for each of those.
Oh, right.
Or each one has an allocation.
And basically, anytime we get an invoice, depending on what the service was, it will get billed to that department. And so Yeah.
Well, I think it's, you know, it's interesting to see these numbers because, in previous year, our total legal budgeted amount was $5,000. And here on our legal line, we have a total of $121,865.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. I think you'd have to go into each one of those funds. You have to be able to know what GLs were combined into a line item.
Sure.
And that's why I thought I would take this approach, which is to actually pull them all out so that you can come here at the end and say, this is actually what we're paying in totality. This year for legal costs, it's gone up considerably, given the number of issues that you've been working with.
And I think sometimes the legal was under other contracted services, or there was another line item, so you wouldn't have seen it as legal, and
Right.
that's what makes this nice. All the way across,
That's
I really do appreciate this format, and I also wanted to know if it was possible, just for my own increasing my knowledge, a copy of your slide deck from your presentation videos. So just in particular, the graphics, the pie charts, those are really good for me to be able to see.
Happy to give you any of that. We can upload the PowerPoint in addition to the video. It's just, you know, you don't have the benefit of
the explanation. Yeah, no, got it. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But the visuals, I was like locked in on those. That was great. And this is also very nice. Thank you for your work.
One of my goals has always been, I've had the occasion of being able to work with people for whom numbers sing too. I am not one of those people. And I really need to break things apart and then kind of reassemble them. And I also feel very strongly around when people see numbers, they get a bit overwhelmed and they go a little like glazed eyes. I really want to find ways that if we can develop a good structure, like a simplistic understanding, so that as time allows, you can start filling in those details. It will make you all better council members. It will make the community better and more fluent with understanding how budgets and funding works. And you know, trying to find ways to take the mystery out of things. This is kind of small. I would like it if I could like print them out bigger for everybody, but that is my, you know, one of my goals. I don't want to lose sight of the fact of the conversation that I had earlier today. I'm trying to set the stage. While my clock is ticking, I'm also trying to figure out where we can start putting, you know, pieces, and tools, and resources, right? So when we talk about the RFP for securing planning services, right? So, you know, yes, I'm not going to be here to shutter that thing through, but at least we can get, you know, something that's put into play and, you know, getting these other components. I had a conversation, one of your larger long-term debt obligations has to deal with the PERS, unfunded debt liability. And so there are some different strategies that you can do to better position the city and actually save some money in the long run. So I had done some work with an individual in particular, and so we went through some of the numbers here. In some ways, the city's been doing pretty good in terms of, you know, making the regular payments, and in the grand scheme of things, when you look at other public agencies, it's not near as large a debt, if you will. However, there are some strategies that the city could potentially take up. Right now, it's kind of like credit card debt, right? So, you know, you're making your minimal payment, so you're current, you're good, but you're also paying a higher interest.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe there's some other approaches, because if by doing some sort of a restructure, you're able to, you know, just make a slight reduction in that percentage that you're paying, you're positioning the city for better stability in the long run. So I think there's some different approaches. I will do everything I can to help pull some of those resources so that when that time comes, if you guys decide to pick it up, then you can do that. And it's not going to solve everything immediately, but again, it's those baby steps, you know, moving forward towards just more sound stability of your fiscal position.
I really appreciated the presentation as well, because, you know, I think that we've all been anticipating this gloom and doom, and the way in which you presented it was very articulate, very careful to explain, very, you know, making recommendations along the way. It was nice. I really thank you.
I do appreciate how informative it was, and the graphs made it very clear to understand. And I appreciate all of your work and support for the ad hoc committee, the information you've given us. And all about moving forward, we understand that even these recommendations, it's not something you just do, but we have to start taking a look at how this all works so we can manage this effectively.
Yeah, there's some big asks in here, but I really do appreciate the work that the ad hoc committee has done as far as putting together, taking a lot of time and being very thoughtful and organized in your presentation. Really good job.
I did. Item number 77, building and improvements.
Okay,
Under
so,
capital outlay.
hold on.
Expenses.
Revenue, expenditure.
Oh, yes, expenditure.
Okay.
77, under capital outlay.
Line
77.
77.
Fund 900 under general fund, capital outlay.
Yes,
What was that, 47,000?
that was for your pedestrian bridge.
Ah, thank you. Should have recognized that.
I put that one in, so I know that number.
So,
Any other?
I have a question.
Sure.
Does this budget, assume full staffing that we have
It
filled?
does.
Okay.
It does. To be clear, this budget is really the same one that you received in July, with all of those assumptions, minus the difference between the projected ending April to the June, so the numbers are a little bit tighter. Even so, you still have invoices and bills, if you will, that were coming in for up to 2 months that could be billed back to the last fiscal year. So there's, you know, until the books are closed, these are still all estimates, and that's normal, right? I didn't make any big fundamental changes. I'm waiting for you guys to tell me if we are looking at shifting the priorities around that. So that's, you know, we tried to do this because this budget was put together by people who aren't here today. So I don't know what all went in. I've been able to go into the worksheets and I can see some of the assumptions. We know that they're prior year expenditures. We know that there's some, adjustments. But how engaged, I can't speak to that. So I didn't want to make fundamental changes on my own and then have you guys then say, well, why did you do that? Nobody ever said, you know, X, Y, Z. You know, we really want to see that supported, you know. So, you know, we're looking for you guys to give us a sense of what your priorities are so that we can revise and come back with something. That's the purpose of tonight.
And that's kind of where we came with stronger motions and recommendations. Jill was really clear. It's like, well, she didn't want to do something just because ad hoc had said it, so we're bringing forward what we found. May I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Expenditures, line 55.
Outside services?
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you guess? Could you just describe what some of those are? I see you had 11,000 general government, 75 recreation, about 8,900 in water, and another 9,000 in sewer. Totals about 38,000. What kind of things could we expect to find under outside services?
You know, I'm actually gonna take this one back and double check. As far as outside services, typically that's going to be things, so for like the streets or something, sometimes that will be, you know, bringing Kernan in to do a patch job, if you will, on the street. So it's just, you know, those outside services. And the reason I'm hesitating on this one is there could be a difference between outside services by consultants versus outside services by contractors versus outside services for professional, other sorts of, professional services, with the, the printer or something like this. So I want to be a little careful about that one, and assuming. Let me circle back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, council? Okay.
Oh. I was about to have words, and then they went away.
Well, we're doing pretty good. It's only 10 minutes to 9 right now.
Yeah, any other questions before I open it?
Do we need to move on these actions tonight?
That's a good question. I would really like some, why don't you take public comment and let me think about this for a moment.
Okay, does the public wish to comment on the thing? Yes, go ahead.
I would just like to reiterate what Michelle said about Jill's presentation. I really liked her new format. It's much easier to follow, and your presentation was wonderful. I appreciated having it on the website so that I could watch it beforehand and think about it. I am very impressed with the amount of work that the ad hoc committee has done. I'm impressed with the magnitude of the recommendations that you're making, because I think that's what it's going to take to get to a balanced budget. So I'm going to focus on most of the things that you don't have on here. I'd like to specifically say, I love Parks and Recreation, but your number 3 about reducing this budget down to $250,000, I'm very encouraged to see. They represent $241,000 of your general fund deficit, and it's just not proportional. And so I'm glad to see that that's a consideration that the council has on their list. So I would like to also encourage you, I looked specifically at the water and sewer rate study, because when I came to you guys in July, I volunteered to do a little looking. And so I have a couple suggestions of things that you might want to consider sooner rather than later. There were some changes that were made when that rate study was implemented by staff that were not actually part of the rate study. And I believe that some of them are policy things that you can simply create an ordinance for and adopt, which will rectify some of your deficit. The biggest one in the water fund is related to how your multifamily and mixed use accounts are being billed. Traditionally, every unit was charged the smallest base rate that existed, which is a 5/8" meter for every single unit. So regardless of the size of the meter that was servicing that apartment complex, every single residential connection was being charged the base rate. Mandy chose, when they implemented this, to change that, and she reduced all of those down to the value of the actual size of the meter. So my estimate is you probably have about $75,000 worth of revenue that's directly related to your multifamily and mixed use accounts not being charged the way they had historically been charged, which is really just a policy by this council as to how they see the value of a multifamily connection. The second thing that I wanted to point out is that your rate study included 2 things that weren't part of what was adopted. One was an escalation factor for each year for your consumption charges. When you guys adopted your resolution, you only included the first year, but none of the future years. And so that has not been increasing every year proportional to the increases in your costs that are associated with variable costs. So that is simply a matter of doing a quick 218 notice based on your existing rate and then adopting those increases. Another thing that was in there for your water was that there were suggested rates that were about 50% higher than what you ended up adopting, because that really was what it took to be able to cover your costs and make any sort of an investment into future expenditures for fixed assets. And they basically say in there, we understand you probably aren't going to adopt these, so here's another alternative, which is what you guys adopted. But it does not require creating an entirely new rate study to be able to make those changes. There are some similar things in sewer. Do you want me to tell you my one thing?
Sure, one thing.
The one thing is what is being charged by staff is not what was adopted, because when they saw how high they were, they decided to put a ratio in there that is about half. for all your commercial lookout.
Thank you.
Welcome, thank you.
Julie Christie, go ahead.
Yep, thank you guys. I really appreciate our ad hoc, Kat, Terry. You guys really dove into it great. Thank you. And Jill as well with the presentation. Everybody's kind of jumping in a way that, just like our prior speaker was saying, stuff was happening, but not maybe in the way we were interpreting it as happening. So we're all kind of like on this new little ball field now and kind of deciding where to pitch and defense. And I think that we definitely need to have a reserve for our general fund. I know that's not really part of passing the budget, but we discussed a lot of things this evening that really isn't about passing the budget, but it's a lot of internal aspects of creating the budget. And so that's something I hope we can continue to have that conversation. I do think that we should speed up the Parks and Rec fees presentation to the council. And I do think that you guys need to be a really big part of drafting that out as well. It's kind of hard when we're using income from our public facilities. I went to the Parks and Rec and talked with them about the fee schedule there. I think that it is something that we need to prioritize on. And we also need to get back to not taking a lot of our expenditures out of other funds that they are not really allocated to be taken out of because we have to. So I just feel like you guys are kind of on the right boat for now for what we've been given. I'm happy to hear the audits are getting caught up. That's something I've been really not wanting to mention because of backlash, but that has something that we know it's been in deficit. And so great to hear that that's getting caught up. And if we can just maybe for what we can deal with right now and what we can handle, like maybe just speed it up just a little teeny bit though, with getting some stuff back, like the Parks and Rec fee schedule and any other, like having ear tagging the funds like in the future too, I think is really important. So that we know that these entities are supporting themselves. So Jill, on the Humboldt County webpage, I keep up with all their stuff too. They've got a great platform that they use. It's called the Lighthouse, and it's a visual like data sheet thing that they give out in their packets. And I just think if we could maybe get a resource like that, that would be like super productive. And maybe cut out staff time, maybe not sure, but just throwing it out there. I love the way they outline that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council.
Remember my question.
Great.
Hi, John.
Yeah.
John, I'm sorry, I didn't get my hand up. I just had a comment.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, a couple of them. Sorry, I had to go home. On number 9, working with the energy efficiency and independence, we do have a gentleman that's here in Blue Lake, Scott. He's a neighbor across the street from me, and he works with solar. And at one point, he did talk to the city manager, and she did not think that they needed his assistance. But when you're doing a reach out for solar for City Hall, he does work with Schatz Lab, and he does design solar systems. So that was one item. And regarding the Park and Recreation, the Park and Recreation Commission is actually a part of the park system, and I would hope the council would use them as feedback for information on the fees and the ongoing upkeep of the park. When I was on the council, or maybe it was when I was going to commissions, I can't remember, there were work plans done by the Park and Recreation for the upkeep of the facilities, and they would give estimates on the needs. They would find estimate numbers for the council. I'd like to see that looked at as far as looking at what the park needs. And also, I sent a letter to Jill, and it was regarding the park and the history of the park. And I would like to request that Jill give a copy of that letter to the individual council members. And it has to do with the history of the park.
It was fascinating.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah. Just to make sure that everybody is on the same page with the history of the park. So thank you, Jill. If you could do that for me, I'd really appreciate it.
I will be happy to do that. What I will do is have the letter scanned, distributed to council members, but I will also have it put up onto the website as a supplemental to this particular council meeting as correspondence received, because it really was. It came in, I think I got it yesterday. I didn't get a chance to do the deep dive, but I was like, oh, this is fascinating. Speaks to my genealogical, but I love going down rabbit hole.
Thank you, Jean.
You're very welcome, all of you, and thank you so much for your hard work.
Any other questions from council, please?
So in terms of actuals, projected actuals, so this is based on projected actuals for year end June 30.
That's correct.
And what is the last date that invoices can come in that can be attributed to fiscal year that ends June 30?
Typically, it's like up to 60 days, depending. And so all of those, all of that information is currently being reviewed, by Scott. Vicky does a really great job of tracking all of these things, but he's going to come in and do some ground truthing, making sure that they're allocated to the right place. If they have to make any sorts of, adjustments and whatnot, that will be done. So it's all kind of done in part with putting the books to bed for purposes of developing the audit as well.
So is Scott currently working on 24-25? So he's wrapping up 24-25, and then he's gonna go back and do 23-24.
It's gonna be 23-24 first, about 98% complete. That's the one that I'm hoping I'll have done by Friday. I'm gonna say probably Monday, because it's the holiday. And then he'll proceed with 24-25.
Okay, so this this little mini comparison chart that you did here.
Yeah.
These are all based on
All
projected
projected
actuals.
actuals, that's correct.
So when we get our actuals for 23-24, we can create a little box like this with actual numbers. And then we have our actuals for years previous to that, so we can do this sort of a thing.
Well, I don't have those. So, I mean, it's part of what you and I had talked about, last week, which is I've got worksheets. I don't have finals that I have access to right now. I'm sure they're somewhere, but for the number of different things that I've been wrestling with, unfortunately, I have to be somewhat specific around how far down certain rabbit holes I go. So I had to limit myself here. I really wanted to be able to go in and say, well, what was that 23-24, and I could just to do each year took between 8 and 12 hours to put it into this. So I had to cut myself off somewhere.
Right. But I'm assuming that if one of us wanted to take those actual numbers, we could create something.
Possibly. I would say you're going to want to have some conversations with the accountant on that. I mean, there are things that I don't want to overpromise anything. I want to give a word of caution on that.
Have you had an opportunity to study the most recent audit from?
Not study it, no. You mean from the 22-23?
Yeah.
I've taken a look at the general findings. That's about it. And those findings are actually kind of the same that they've been for a few years in terms of lack of timely submittal of the information for auditing purposes and it being a material weakness. And honestly, that's about as much as a finding as I need to be able to paint the picture that I've got.
Sure, sure. I'm just imagining that the numbers we might be looking for in there.
Yeah,
Somewhere in the 80 pages.
that's not something I've had the time to really go down into and have embedded in my brain.
Anything else? Let's get out here before 10.
My husband would be amazed.
Any other questions for Shaq?
Well, let's come back to this for half a moment. I am going to ask Emily first and foremost, because she is your Park and Recreations director. Do you have any big burning questions that you might want to have some clarifications to? Because you and I are going to need to sit down and have some big conversations. But is there anything that you can think of right now that might be helpful for clarification purposes?
Not at this time.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's a good forum. I don't feel at the moment that I need to have motions. I think what I would like to ask is that we receive these, come back to you with a revised budget with the goal of trying to meet what you've identified here, and then anything. So for instance, number 3, the motion to reset, give us an opportunity to see what we can do to meet that. And it may be that to meet this goal, there's going to have to be some really big decisions. And some of those decisions may or may not be politically palatable to you. And so rather than just saying gun ho, I think we want to make sure that we're working in sync so that you can take a look at what the implications of making a drop like that will be. And there's a few other things that I would like to take a look at in terms of whether these would be urgent kinds of items, or if they're going to be more long-term, kind of staggering, and then getting some of the cost estimates, for instance, for the forensic audit and things like this. So I would like, I'm happy to take it in the form of a motion, but I kind of feel like I have what I need and kind of come back.
You need a motion, then we approve these recommendations.
No, I think I've got direction. If you're comfortable doing that, and you trust that I'll come back with something. If you're feeling like you really need to have an emotion, I get that too.
Well, and I think one of the things to consider is whether or not it's important to the council to have a balanced budget where we aren't trying to just find some way to pay for that deficit, but that we actually look at the expenditures to be able to pay for that deficit, because yeah, I mean, we have had those and then used some fund balances to pay that off. And then that just leaves us down the road where we are now.
Sure.
And so if we have, if we want a balanced budget, I think that's something, if the ad hoc committee is going to be part of that conversation. One of the difficulties we had is she needed to come back to you, and we are moving to that place where this budget needs to be passed now. So.
Well, and so, first and foremost, the goal is always to have a balanced budget. You can't be operating in a deficit and then somehow expect that you're going to get grant money, but the feds don't like it at all, right? Or your ability to secure long-term loans, you're not going to get there if you're operating at a deficit. You can get a short-term loan, but not long-term. So there's no state law that tells cities they have to have a balanced budget. It's a little different for other entities. But there are constraints in terms of your ability to take on debt. So the goal is always to get to a balanced budget. So I would like to bring you back a balanced budget. I needed to hear a bit around what the recommendations and the priority of council was going to be, so that we can come back and you know, develop scenarios and look at what that's going to be, recognizing, of course, that we'll do our best in order to get those numbers to that place. Some of the points that all of a sudden I was trying to say Jessie, and I know it's Jenny, and I'm really sorry. And then I got hit with a Jessica in my brain all of a sudden. You know, the issues that she's identified as far as the internal decisions from a policy perspective. There are a couple of others as well, and I think that's going to be a longer term you know, conversation, but it absolutely could help to get a little balance in terms of how the financing of the water and sewer have been done. So for example, if there's a water line repair, it's been billed 60% to water, 40% to wastewater. And you know, so that shouldn't happen. It caused me some great consternation. I have not changed that practice for the very simple reason of you're in a deficit right now with that. And the bigger issue is we need to find some corrective actions related to that. So that's not a great place to be in. It's one of the reasons that your wastewater reserve is decreasing. So it's not as simple as saying it's one thing or three big things. I think it needs to have a comprehensive review of it.
Anyone else want to be recognized now? I think at this point for me, I just want to see us try and have a balanced budget, not, you know, take everything out at once, but kind of assess where we're at and get a real picture of where we're at. So I think we can just try and balance it out.
We will do our thing.
So how quickly can some of the things that Jenny mentioned be put into effect?
Kind of depends on some of the issues, and I would need to be able to spend some time to get some familiarity of some of the ins and the outs. I'm not a 218 girl. There's some specific steps that need to get put into that. Didn't have to deal with those. I mean, I haven't had to deal with 218 since I was on the Kimberville Community Services District. That was 1998. So there's a lot that has changed since then.
So I realize
we
that
would
that's
need to
really prolonged the process.
I understand that. Some of the things you're going to be changing horses midstream pretty soon. So we want to be really careful about my starting something as somebody else coming in to pick up my work.
Sure.
So some of this is going to have to be a little strategic. The first thing we need to do is get you guys a budget. That's going to be my priority right now.
Yeah.
200 hours.
I do have a comment.
Sure, go.
I appreciate that there have been comments recognizing that this does reflect a great deal of work and thought, and I think the previous presentation as well. I would ask council again to consider making some motions and giving something more specific direction to staff. Simply saying we want a balanced budget isn't enough. I think that somewhere in this, you have to express to staff what our priorities are. It's a challenge because we haven't had that opportunity as council to say, what are our priorities? We suggested some. We're not saying that you have to take what we suggested, but if we don't put some kind of guidance on there, then we are prioritizing discretionary funds over infrastructure. And I'm very concerned about a safety net. And if we begin to borrow against that last million that we have that's in the sewer capital reserve fund, that generates about $35,000 a year. The water operating fund could have generated $35,000 a year. The losses that we've had that we built in for Parks and Rec, we've been around another $35,000 a year. So I know that I am pushing, but I'm asking for a little more clarity.
Well, I'm feeling like city manager has indicated that she has clear direction based on the recommended motions, and she can bring back additional information, because some of these are not going to be a priority as far as like if it's going to take a lot of time to initiate forensic audit estimations on how much that's gonna cost and then bringing that back to us versus looking at the parks budget, recreation budget, and, you know, like looking at the possibilities with that, I would put forward, let's move on number 3. If we had to do number 2, I would say do 2F, but that's not, absolutely number 1 seems really important. And then the potential for number 4, but again, I feel like we're gonna need more information on reducing planning fund 220 because of what all of that is going to involve and what's already anticipated. So I feel like, at least for tonight's purposes, that staff have enough direction, unless I misinterpreted what she said.
No, I mean, I would agree. I think that, you know, your recommended motions 3 and 4, 5 is not going to change any of my numbers in this budget. I'm really needing direction on where am I going for the budget? Am I looking at a 20% reduction across the board? Am I looking at needing to restructure, you know, staffing? I mean, those are the kinds of directions that I'm needing, like some specific dollar objectives. You know, all of this stuff is really good, and I think it's all stuff that needs to, you know, kind of get vetted a little bit. But you know, 3, 4, 5 will end up, you know, because by the time you get to February, you're 3/4 of the fiscal year, it's going to have a minimal impact, you know, on this year's budget. That doesn't mean it's not important. It just means it's going to be very informative for the following year's fiscal budget in terms of the cost recovery and liability. All really good things. We need to have some time to find out. So I'm really looking for, tell me where I'm going to get the money. You know, where's your priorities for the funding? 3 and 4 kind of speak to a lot of it.
Then I would rephrase it, Jill. I would say, and the reason is, having looked at so many years worth of budgets and then looking at the actuals that come in, we continue to miss our targets on revenues and we fall short quite often. And so I think it's unfortunate and probably overly optimistic what we have for our general fund right now. And if we don't make those adjustments, I would throw out 15% across the board, you know, or 15% overall, find it somewhere. But, you know, if that's the kind of guidance you need, then, you know, that's what I would suggest council discuss and bring forward. This is, I think I've seen this in the past with us, is that we sort of, okay, we discussed a lot of ideas and then we hand it over to staff. And then when it comes back, it isn't necessarily what we were expecting and what we said. That's why we took the time to list so many different potential motions, because these are all critical points. Whether you agree strongly or disagree strongly, we haven't even had that conversation. But I think if what you need is a numerical target, then if we're looking at, what was it, 1.1 million in general fund, or like 1 point something million, yeah, 15% reduction would probably help right off the bat, and also looking at those suggested cuts on Parks and Rec. It's, I mean, like Jenny said, we all love Parks and Rec, but the fact of how we got here and how quickly we got here and the amount of loss that represents, you know, political suicide or not, this is one of the things that we as a council have to step forward and make those tough decisions.
So make recommendations.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we see what they come up with and we'll compare it to this next time when they come forward with whatever it is, and then we can move forward based upon what's not in there.
When is our next meeting?
Well, our timeline is of concern, right? We don't have another time set to meet where we look at it again and we decide if it's
December 23rd.
right. We have to adopt a budget on December 23rd. So the next time we meet to talk about budget, that's the last time we have to deal with this. So if we're so it seems like tonight is the time to put some hard edges on this, because it's kind of our last chance to do it.
Well, I mean, there's only really short. So I mean, we can put all these guidelines on here, but we may not be able to implement them anytime in the future. Anybody else want to talk?
I understand what you're saying, but I mean, like, in terms of how. When we adopt this budget, we're gonna be halfway through the year, right? End of December is halfway through. So we've already spent, by then we will have already spent more money than we're budgeting for the rest of it. So, if we're gonna come anywhere close to balanced, we have to make the hard choices now, because we're not gonna have time to go back and do a mid-year review and make any changes. This is our chance to do that now. 'Cause we're
So,
already-
to be clear, you're not making the hard choices now. We're looking for direction now so that we can do the work so that you can make those hard choices at the next time. And you will then have a written budget with a narrative that identifies, specifically what would be proposed to change. So, I mean, unfortunately, it's going to kind of look like the narrative that you've gotten before, but I've, tried to start shifting it. I've got all sorts of placeholders with numbers. I think in the long run, you really need to do a fundamental overhaul of your budget document so that it's really clear in terms of your narrative, you've got your summaries, you've got your, key goals and objectives, so that next year you can come back and say, yeah, we met this. One of my challenges in looking at last year's budget is what was the money, spent on, right? I have to go back into the files in order to go, oh, okay, that was for that project over here. This was this project over here. And maybe people are talking about it, maybe they're not. Put it in the document so that you've got something to essentially evaluate from. I'm needing, for purposes of this revised draft, some numeric objectives so that I can tell you what that looks like. And so if it's as simple as we want the general fund to be balanced, okay, we'll figure out how we're going to deal with 170,000 just general fund. If we're looking at the water and sewer, there's going to be a few constraints as far as that's concerned. But those are really big, kind of picture objectives. You've given these critical recommendations, happy to take it into motion. It's not going to change what my fundamental approach is going to be on this, because now I've heard from you guys, right? So if you want to make a motion, it's completely fine. We're going to move forward with, developing something that comes to you in December that meets those, big objectives. So.
Terry, what is your thought process? Do you want to do the motions, or do you want to do a general statement?
Well, I think a motion is important, and if the motion is that we have a balanced budget and, and there's cuts made, I believe that is important as well, because when we look at the overall budget and the general fund, you can't use other funds to pay for that deficit. You can't go over to sewer and help bring that down. So even though we look at what our deficit is at 200,000, 170,000 of that is in the general fund, and you can't just reach out there in those other funds to find the money to cover that. So if we want a balanced budget, that does need some type of. Okay. So if we give her that direction for a balanced budget and what these recommendations are, then that gives her more to work on or with.
Great. So my next question is, do we want to pass each of these individually, or what are we thinking?
I'm having a thought, if you want to give me half a minute to scribble it down.
Do you want to go? I'm just going to go through. Do you want to go through each one here and make a motion on each one and vote on them?
One umbrella. Give me just 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
just give
just
me a
trying
minute. I think better when I'm right. It's a little messy. Accept the ad hoc committee recommendations. Incorporate the necessary revisions with the objective of presenting a balanced budget for fiscal year 25-26, and incorporate the recommendations for those action or tasks for non-critical. I can't read my own writing. For non-critical something. Point being, you've got some specifics with the objective of getting a balanced budget for those things like the rate review, that will be getting a timeline, and we can incorporate that into the budget narrative so that you know that it's going to be developed as a priority for the year. That could actually be put into some of the goals and the objectives of those different funds. That might be a better way for me to put it.
Some of.
Second, I just pictured what it would look like. But so that we're clear, what I would see is for the rates, the fee, not the rate, the fee for Park and Recreation, we would identify as an objective for the Park and Recreation Division to undertake a review of the fees they're charged across the board, and present that. And that would be done during this fiscal year, hopefully for adoption sooner than that. And then that really incorporates that desire to make sure that staff has identified it as a priority task to be working on. Anything that doesn't get done in this fiscal year because of limited staffing capacity, then it carries over into the next year.
So I guess
she's pondering it. I can see
is that a motion? Function to accept the recommendation.
It was a motion for me.
Okay.
And I second it.
Second, let's go on. That's the recommendation.
Can I clarify something? So when you're talking about things that don't get done in this fiscal year, you're talking about analysis of fee and rate structures that may or may not get completely analyzed, amended, implemented.
Right. Well, I'm also thinking things like the financial update of their financial policies or the personnel policies or some of these other things. These are all really important objectives that should be identified. And it may be that you can't get to it because you don't have funding right now, but that shouldn't stop the work that gets put in which case you roll it into the next fiscal year as an ongoing objective for that. In this case, it would be for the city manager's office to get that kind of work done. For the Park and Recreation to make sure that the fees are being completed, right? And for water, wastewater, absolutely the same sort of thing. So while you'll need to go through a procurement process to take potentially a look at those undertaking a rate study, the rate study would probably not be done in time for the next fiscal year or even the end of this fiscal year. So, it's basically getting it put down into a written form so that it's got that accountability that you're looking for. And I feel like that's really what you're looking for. Look here, this is one of our goals and objectives. Go forth and conquer.
If you're looking for a response, it would be ensuring that we're also providing funding now for some of these activities.
Right.
For those that got
Yes.
And is that clear? So you're going to include forensic audit?
I'm sorry?
You're going to include forensic audits in the budget update, or we're just going?
I would like some numbers. I mean, I can make a couple of calls. You can do two things for the forensics audit. You can go ahead and put numbers in there and make your numbers look even worse, or you can say, this is one of the goals that we want to set, and you can do a solicitation for those services, and then have an agenda item that would come forward, and you would look at transferring funds in order to, let's say it's $20,000. We would propose to, it's not a budgeted item, therefore we're looking to transfer 5,000 from this fund, 4,000 from this fund, make it up to 20,000 and have council approve it. You could do it that way as well. I think that would be probably a better way. to go about it than trying to estimate a forensic audit at this time.
So we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
I think there's wisdom in your words. I also think that there is money in the budget if we choose to make that be the money in the budget for that. So if we decide to put 40,000 towards forensic audit and we only spend 25,000, fantastic. It's still in the general fund. We can use it elsewhere. If we don't put it in, then we continue to go further behind in advancing our knowledge in this. So I would say, and again, if you have 50% or nearly 50% of your general fund is in Parks and Recreation, and you know that those expenditures result in a 60% loss of those expenditures that you had planned, then you certainly should consider the importance of having an audit and having that funded. And then that will make adjustments elsewhere.
So a suggestion would be, give me a number to put into the audit line item.
I go 40,000.
Okay, so it's gonna have to get amended, because we know that it's been budgeted for a single year audit. We're gonna have 2 audits.
Oh,
plus
this is in addition to.
Exactly. So right now, the total amount right now is it's probably around $19,000. That's gonna get doubled for 2 fiscal year audits plus the 40 for that, just because it's a ballpark number. We could do that. That's the clarity I need.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another question. A little bird whispered to me one time that a city our size might be able to get a waiver on the annual audits. And I'm wondering if that's true or not, or what all the little bits and parts might entail, what all that means exactly, and if it's applicable for us, and if we might get that waiver and spend the money on a forensic audit instead of the annual audits.
That would be something I need to take a look at. I feel like there is some sort of a mechanism, but I'm not getting the clarity in my brain right now because I'm getting a collision with the nonprofit world. For the nonprofits, the trigger has to do with the amount of revenue that you have coming in, and I just have a collision that's happening with those requirements. We could certainly come back and take a look at it, but here's what I'm going to suggest to you. You've already got multiple audits that show that you have a material weakness for failure to be producing. I don't know that this is the time you want to take that up.
Right. So
I mean, I get where you want to go, but I think you really need to get current. And
okay. And does it ever happen that the auditing firm can add a forensic level to the audit that they're already doing? And would there possibly be some kind of savings in doing it that way?
I'm going to have a hard time answering that one, to be honest.
Seems like there might be a conflict of interest and it's 2 distinct processes that would be happening and that would make it difficult to separate the 2, I would think. Not that I
Thank you
would
for
know.
tactfully putting it that way. That's exactly it. They've been doing your audits for a number of years, and that would indicate that they missed something. You'd want to have it independent.
Okay. So
Thank you for the tactful answer.
just to confirm, you're gonna go ahead and bring back a new the budget, and we're gonna take a look at it, and you're gonna apply these recommendations. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Very good. Earlier.
Can I just ask a question, John?
Sure.
Are you proposing that she has to balance the water fund as well? It's not clear from what the motion says, but.
Yeah.
It's just the general fund that you're shooting for.
At this juncture, yeah.
Do you want to move forward on the vote? Is everyone ready?
One more question. If we're not trying to balance the water, what are we trying to do?
We're gonna need to take a closer, look at that piece. I'm gonna need to talk with, Scott, around, because there are constraints, around the water and sewer budget being proprietary funds. The world that I walked in a long time ago is long enough that I'm not gonna make any assumptions about what we can or cannot do. I need to talk to the accountant about that.
I do have one before we go.
Sure, go ahead.
One question, and that would be, how does the fact that the school runs a summer recreation program that's fully paid for all families in Blue Lake, I would like a consideration taken how that is affecting the program that we run, because I see the revenues have gone down there. But do we expect that trend to continue because we make a lot less on that program? So maybe just consideration to.
Got it.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of moving forward with Jill's recommendation of reviewing documents and for the balanced budget for us to review and do a comparison, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm not sure where I am, so I'm saying.
Okay. Do you abstain too, or do you say aye?
I see.
So, 4 in favor, thank you. All right, moving on to our next item.
Oh.
Yeah, there's more. There's more.
Let's see, what do we have?
Okay, that was inadvertent, my bad.
Council correspondence, do we have anything, or do we have any council correspondence besides the letter from June that we don't have?
No.
Item number 8, report of council and staff, ad hoc committee reports. Okay. Any other ad hoc committee reports?
Well, there's, our transparency ad hoc.
Sure. That is for anything you have.
Just a basic update. We're still working on it. And John has been exercising some of his IT skills to put 2 pieces of a video together to make one and enhance audio, so it's a little bit more easier to hear. And anyway, we're trying to make things better. Oh, yeah, there's Senate I forget the numbers.
I shared with like SB something, 7542, I'll just say.
Yeah.
There's
And-
one coming forward that's gonna, you wanna talk about it?
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
It's gonna change and add a lot to the Brown Act. And it a lot of it pertains to remote access, audio and visual, audio and video type access. There is a clause in there that says it does not apply to municipalities under 30,000. So yay, maybe that means we're off the hook, maybe it doesn't, but there is
There's a clause in there that says if the Zoom is disconnected or some kind of technical issue, they have to pause the meeting for up to an hour until they can try and reestablish the right access for you.
But I think we might skate on that one, and League of Cities is having like an hour and a half long Zoom conference about this, and I'm gonna sign up to take that. So we can figure out if and how it's gonna look at this. But I just read a really quick legal brief about it, and I think the 30,000 threshold might save our bacon on that one. And my understanding is that we're maybe in the works to get an upgraded internet service to this building, so perhaps, we're gonna be having a more dependable being in here in the not too distant future. And yes, we're working on getting as many minutes and videos posted. I can say now that every video that was recorded for city council in this calendar year has been posted to our website. And it's either linked to our own, a video hosted on our own YouTube channel or on Access Home. And working on getting all the some of the the commission videos linked as well. I haven't done those as much as the council. Anyway, the website is, we still have problems. We're still trying to fix them as time allows with our budgeted 4 hours. Emily and I are working on upgrading the Parks and Rec web presence.
Me and Kat are going to be bringing forward some potential recommendations.
Can't hear you.
Me and Kat are going to be bringing some recommendations forward for commissions in the near future. So I just want to make you guys aware of that.
I'm glad to hear that, without at the risk of opening it too far up. One thing I do want to note is there's really no allocation of resources for your commissions. And because we're currently really thin in terms of staffing within the office, that is posing some significant challenges. You know, the person who's responsible for doing your water and your sewer is spending a lot of time, managing the different commissions and putting together all of those packets, as well as the planning commission. So we have some deficiencies there. I don't have a sense in this budget around the financial support for those commissions. When you think about when they're needing use of the facilities, use of staff, that little graph that we had in terms of where all staff is being allocated to, but you don't really have this, way to tease out what the support for those commissions are. So I think it's going to be really great that you guys have that conversation. Certainly examining the charge of those different commissions would be a great thing to get them regrounded. Why are we here? It's like one of the essential questions that you must always ask, right? And I think it would be really great to do that, to set it as a goal. Can I ask?
Along those lines?
Yeah.
With an ad hoc report, do we want to talk about our ad hoc for the city clerk position?
Yes, please.
We're working on it.
No, frankly, we haven't worked on it. We definitely did an AI list of the candidates, and we have not gotten back to the city manager. So I think similar to how we with the recruitment for the city manager, sorry, we're talking city clerk, for the city manager, is we should look through, call, identify those for interview, and try to identify some windows of opportunity.
Make sure you give me plenty of running time. I've got questions that are prepared, to do that, but we're going to be needing staff to assist you in that. And
if you have time, would you let us know what you need from us and what you can do, so that we don't
we just need to, we just need to coordinate so we can pull those pieces together. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where do you guys start?
City manager report. I think the big thing to know is that I'm bouncing right now between trying to get like the last week's meeting, this week's meeting. Tonight you got the packet for next Tuesday's meeting. Tentatively, we're looking at doing closed session on the 6th. I'm going to reach out to you. I need to know what your availability is. But we'll have that conversation, and then I'll be working on, budget. We've got a number of reports that are due to the state. I've got a December 1st deadline, and the information is still trying to come in. So I'm kind of pulling my hair out right now. And I'm really trying to get things, again, staged, to move forward. Moving forward with the budget is going to take time. I will probably need to do some work from home because I cannot get it done here in the office. It's as simple as that.
On that, in part because of interruptions, also part because of the equipment.
No, that computer is a bear.
Yeah, so, do you have budgeted currently for some IT and communications upgrade? I know there's something about our phone system, but.
So honestly, there was a computer that Danny was using that was, really, I think, a pretty current, computer. I think it was just recently purchased, and the one that was in the, city manager's office was an older one. I decided that, I'm just gonna use the one that's there. I'm not gonna try to transition with whatever, Danny had, but I would say that one is no longer being used. When the, transition occurs, do the whole thing at once. She was still here, when I came in, and so it would have been clunky and awkward, and, you know, to be trying to do something in the midst of, all the changes that were happening at once. So I think that there hopefully is some existing, hardware, that we can go ahead and use in that transition.
Just the challenges, I think, of something with a phone system there that was prohibitive of some functions and needed to be an upgrade. And then I know Justin has put in so much time and energy in trying to keep us going here. But in addition to whatever internet upgrades, a larger screen amplification,
All of it.
The whole shebang.
Yeah. No, I think it would be good if you could have somebody design a proper system. I mean, Kat, you probably have a voice that, travels the best by virtue of the residents, the rest, and you too, Michelle, but it's really hard for me to hear you guys. So if I was sitting out here, I'd be like, why am I here? To be honest, I would be very frustrated. So yeah, finding a way to get in, the audio, would be very beneficial for people in the room here as well as on TV.
Yeah, there's a number of folks that used to come to our meetings that have told me they don't come anymore because they can't hear when they're here. So they wait for the video and they watch it at home.
Yeah.
Can I ask about, next Tuesday's meeting is at 6:30?
Yes.
Is that what it's projected for here in this place? And then
In
for
your
the
packet.
6th?
It's in your packet.
Okay, I need to plug it on my phone.
Oh, gotcha.
Um,
Oh, God. Okay.
For
Thank
the
you.
6th is Saturday.
Yes, that is correct.
I'm
And
gonna-
we're gonna leave it there.
Remember the doodle poll?
The doodle poll.
The doodle
Oh, got it. Yes,
Thank you.
okay. Great, I forgot
That's all
about
good.
that.
That's why
I
I'm trying
just
to
didn't have a
remember.
specific anything in there, so I just wanted to, got it, I got you.
So thank you for that little reminder. So tomorrow I'm gonna email out that packet. We've got, were you able to get it uploaded tonight?
The agenda itself, was not there, just the packet.
Oh, there's a separate folder for it. So Emily in the morning will get the agenda packet, posted. I've already got copies made for the hard copy posting so that Rosie can do that in the morning. I was tentatively not planning on being here tomorrow. I'll be here tomorrow, only half a day. But we'll get the rest of the packets and I'll make sure that you get emailed, that information to plug it in.
And then just a request for the future regular meetings would be to add the future agenda items.
Say that last part?
Future agenda items.
Yeah.
On the regular agenda as a mark for an item, please.
Okay.
Just for regular meetings.
Sure, to incorporate that back into, yeah, I do remember
And
seeing
that
a couple
little
of
space
agendas.
right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, okay.
Jill, can you give us an update on the finance manager recruitment? Is there anything going on there?
No. Nothing, honestly, been pinging around, I haven't even had time to get back to it. We have, 2 candidates, and I haven't had a chance to circle back and, this.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you want to? So I just want to fill everyone in. I attended HCOG meeting. We are looking at our arena allocations again. I can't remember the ratios. I think it was 50-50 on, the current population and then jobs available, but the ratio may have been different. HCD has reached out and said they need to go ahead and use this new methodology to allocate housing requirements for the next housing element, and Blue Lake scored really high on an area that they want to try and develop more. So we are coming up with a new formula at HCOG. They're going to be looking at our demographics, our social economical, our race, and all those things, and they're going to use that to help determine how many people additionally we're going to put in Blue Lake. So we may be going beyond our current 42 new units, and they may be upgrading us to something else. So HCD continues to great. Show us the way.
Yeah, bring them up.
Right.
Anyway, just wanted to fill everyone in on that. So we'll be looking at some new mathematical formulations at HCOG.
And that was particular to Blue Lake.
Yeah, Blue Lake scored really high.
We scored high.
On
High in a good way?
development. I mean, it depends. It really depends on what your thoughts are, how you want to see the city move forward. So I think we may be getting additional units beyond our allocated 42.
I think that's pretty count of that, I think.
HCOG, I think HCOG and a lot of the environmental groups are actually, it seemed like against using those formulas, but we're going to be coming up with a new formula and presenting it to HCD, see if they'll be accepting of HCOG recommendations.
I think Arcata was questioning the assigned numbers. Because I mean, they've been building out. They've been kind of ahead of that curve. It doesn't matter. They're still getting more thrown at them, and they're also pretty confined. Landlocked.
That's it on my end.
Okay. And I had an RCBA meeting last night, and you guys would be happy to know that we just had our second closed session for staff evaluation of the city, of the general manager, or executive director rather, and there's going to be at least one more, and so I think that we kind of did this process, and it took us bunches of meetings, and the public was critical of how many times you're going to meet to evaluate somebody, but it's like that process is so cumbersome, and I was just sitting there going, just looking at the process, and it was helpful to see how other organizations do exactly the same thing, and it's totally normal.
You also went to HWM.
I did go to HWM, and it was another short meeting. Those guys are awesome. Yeah.
Well, there is a big piece of news from HWMA, which was that Cal Recycle grant got clawed back for $2.3 million for the organics processing.
Wow.
Oh, we didn't hear that.
Eric sent around an email with that letter to certainly to all the staff members, basically, just not getting the progress that they needed.
That's
Cal
too bad.
Recycle, yeah, it is too bad. So it's a bit of a setback. The amount of organic waste which is generated by Blue Lake and the smaller entities, that's not going to be driving the development of a local processing facility.
Wow.
So that's clawed back for this year or clawed back?
Period.
Makes
Maybe if
sense.
there's another funding cycle that will open and you've got a project that can go forward, Cal Recycle's a funny animal. you want to make sure that you are meeting your goals and objectives when you are receiving the funding. And it can sometimes ding against you when you come forward with another grant application. So I would encourage you to work with HWMA staff to figure out what is necessary to kind of move some of these big projects that have been talked about for a number of years to proceed. I'll be mindful there too. It was the same challenge that I had when I was there.
Anything in the report? Gave your city manager report.
The Safety Commission circulated their survey on Saturday. They just delivered them to all the homes around High Street. And we had a good meeting again this month. We had Andrew from the Rancheria gave a report, and so did Sergeant McCall from Sheriff's Department. Anyway, we're having some good dialogue and attendance. That's really nice reports.
Can you remind me about what the deadline is for that survey?
It's about 30 days. I didn't get one. I'm not in the survey area, so I didn't get.
It's on my kitchen table.
And what is the process? They just left it on the door and then people drop it at City Hall?
Yeah, it's a drop it at City Hall, or my guess is drop it at City Hall. Yeah, it's drop it. Throw it in with your water bill.
But there's not any prompting or leading or guiding in the process.
So the whole idea was to not prompt them to guide, give people choices.
That wasn't what it was like when they gave our house.
Which one came to your house?
I don't know, my husband, he talked to him and then he came and told me all the things they had said. Like, okay.
We were wondering, somebody got stuck behind everybody else and spending a lot of time with certificates. Alrighty, anything else? I don't think so.
What about Arts and Heritage? Oh, well, I guess
I'll
it's
get real quick on Arts and Heritage. We kind of got an overview. We're looking at the logo again. They're going to decide whether they want to move forward with it or bring it back to us for like one more reiteration, see if we want to provide funding for it. I did reach out to Noah, who did the design. He said it'd be about $100 to do a recolor on it. They may also look at a different logo. The land acknowledgement, they actually just got from Del Arte and just are going to bring forward the Del Arte one to us. And see if we want to check out a land acknowledgement. And then,
And just to be clear, that would be for our meetings, all meetings.
I don't know, it depends on, I told them to bring it forward to us to see if we wanted to have them spend time on that or what route we would take.
So they're gonna be put on the agenda at some future.
Yes. And then, last thing that was kind of relevant, the AI thing, it was initially a full ban of AI usage in Kool-Aid government. And they kind of came to the conclusion that it was more of a art that is submitted to any of our contests need to be declared as AI art. And like, that's a great way to use the Arts and Heritage Commission to find more of AI. We'll be bringing that forward something.
And they had kind of inherited an old agenda.
Right.
That's been kind of on the books for the better part of a year.
Oh.
So they were addressing questions that dated back to January.
Julie, go ahead.
John, this is back to your report on HCOG. One thing I did notice in the packet for that meeting, I was able to Zoom it, and very poor attendance, which was very sad to see for the communities. And the opportunity score that we got, yeah, we were the second highest, and the demographics on that are very skewed. So in that packet, other municipalities, not a whole bunch, but it sounded like they were all contacted. Their planners wrote back in kind of with a synopsis of how they're standing in regards to certain areas. I think it would be really nice at the city of Blue Lake if we could actually get a letter into HCOG in reference to the HCD allocations, just to kind of put out where, the 50-50 split for us isn't very demographically proportionate as well. So maybe just a little more research on that. Kat, I'm sure you watched the recording. Anybody wants to watch it, it's on Access Humboldt. And maybe just get a little more versed about what was talked about that meeting. And if we want to get something in as written communication before the next meeting, I think that'd be really appropriate. Thank you.
I agree, you should watch it, take a look at it, because it may have big implications.
No, I guess we better not snooze on that one.
Any other questions, comments, or reports? Otherwise, we can adjourn.
Motion to. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Remember to put your mics back.